Well, here we are.
We made it. Good
Technical
evening, good
difficulty, but we
afternoon.
got here.
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Jim Shelby, and I'm joined by my co-host, whose name I'll put on the screen right now, Larry Cohn.
I'm Larry Cohn.
Yeah, we knew that, Larry.
I know. Well, it's just nice to reaffirm that.
It's really important tonight that you understand exactly what this event is, what it's meant to us, how it reshaped the entire foundation of Revitalize. Larry's in my personal brand that we work on together, the Jim and Larry team. And Larry, do you want to share a little bit about the history of the organization that this is set to benefit, Revitalize?
Sure. So Revitalize began in the mid-90s, and it actually began as an organization called Metropolis Wine Club. It was based and still is in St. Louis. And it started off as an organization to create social events in the city to showcase some of the renovation and rehab that was going on in central St. Louis. And then it morphed into Revitalize St. Louis, and that's where it stood from about 2000 up until just maybe a month or so ago. And it took many incarnations as Revitalize St. Louis, but it primarily Revitalize's purpose was, again, to showcase the benefits of city living in the city of St. Louis, showcase significant historic buildings, and bring people together who are passionate about creating a more prosperous and more vibrant downtown St. Louis and St. Louis City. What is interesting about Revitalize is Revitalize, and I believe it was 2018, came to NextCore, which was a business that Jim and I had, a co-working collaborative workspace, and asked to be housed out of there, which we were thrilled that they did. And in 2018, we joined the board, and there were many different challenges, let's just say, challenges of what direction to take Revitalize, what it should focus on. And just like so many of these change makers that we are going to feature, we face struggles, we faced challenges, and many times and points we thought it might just be best to shut down and close Revitalize. But again, as you'll see in these stories of change makers, the passion and the commitment to create a change in St. Louis is what kept us going. And we had an entire revamping of the board members. We were very grateful and honored and blessed that so many of the founding board members stayed in there to get us where we were, but where you are isn't always where you're going. And there was some challenges and conflicts, like I said, and we morphed and we changed the board and we put on broader events, and we wanted to reach a broader base than just the city of St. Louis. We wanted to go more regional. And then recently we thought, well, why just limit it to greater St. Louis? Let's take this concept and let's bring it to other cities. So we've opened chapters from Melbourne, Australia to Lake Chapala, Mexico, Los Angeles, Kansas City, St. Louis, et cetera, et cetera. And we're continuing to open more chapters, but we're changing the game a little bit, and we want to feature change makers. We want to feature people that have taken the circumstances in which they grew up or in which they were living in and have kind of shifted the perspective or shifted the reality of those circumstances, which in many cases seem very dire and hopeless, and actually made something really good of it. And we also just want to showcase people that have had a passion about creating change in their community and how they did it, and how you as the audience or the viewer tonight might be inspired to create some type of change. These are just, like I say, quote unquote, ordinary people doing what I would call extraordinary things. And I think that's what's special about tonight. And that's a little background. Jim, is there anything else that I left out about the Revitalize?
Yeah, I'd just like to share a couple of things that were really important to us as we transitioned through this. And I want to say that there's a common theme that all of our change makers experience, and that's that doing something that hasn't been done or doing it a different way is hard, and it isn't always popular. You know, we had, you know, just a couple of situations where people didn't like the direction that we wanted to take Revitalize. But during the pandemic, let me share with you that, you know, Larry and I had a business, and we had other people involved in the business as well. We had several employees. And in February, life was good. We were coasting along. In March, things changed dramatically. And in February, this is of 2020, or I'm sorry, and in April of 2020, everything fell apart. Revitalize at the time was also in the process of hosting events, great things that were going on within its territory, so to speak. And you could no longer take people out to show them buildings that were being renovated. You couldn't take them out to show them new restaurants. It just wasn't allowed. So we wanted to find a way for Revitalize to remain relevant. And as the president and vice president of the board, we almost hung it up. In fact, we were on the verge of winding down the nonprofit when we got an email from a school in St. Louis that their students were so inspired by the Changemaker series that we put on, which was really just an effort to continue to get programming out. And they wanted us to come and speak with the students, and we did. And the feedback was absolutely amazing. And it led us to look back at the two events we had done prior. We did these events as NextCore, as Jim and Larry. And we looked back at an event called Streamathon for Small Business and an event called the Small Business Independence Day Celebration. We realized there was significant viewership on those events, and a lot of businesses and people benefited. And we wanted to find a way to take what we had created that was really successful. And even though it couldn't save our business, and at the time we thought it couldn't save Revitalize, we wanted to continue the concept. And so the Changemakers concept, we approached the board of Revitalize and asked permission to put this on and make it to the benefit of Revitalize. We looked at a whole rebranding structure, and you know, the feedback has been amazing from the Changemakers that we've spoken to. And I will tell you that, you know, I wanted to tell the stories, but for me, it was monumentally life-altering to hear their stories. And so this was a great, great thing for us to be able to participate in. And we're going to have some announcements as we continue. You have the ability, I'll just get into it. We're going to showcase 45 Changemakers from all over the world, from Australia to Africa to South America to Europe to Asia. And of course, the United States and North America will be featured. Tonight, we're going to showcase the first 11 Changemakers. And I mean, their stories are diverse and amazing, but like Larry said, it's all about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's what we're going to get into. And you have the ability tonight to make a donation in support of Revitalize. And Larry, do you want to share what we're going to do with those donations and how we're going to support this?
Sure. So you will have the opportunity to make a donation, and the Jim and Larry team, Jim and I, are going to match those donations up to $5,000. I also just want to add that everything that you're seeing here was produced solely by Jim and myself. We had no outside help, and we did not source any money from any other place. It was just all from us, from our heart, from our spirit. And so you're going to see a lot of grassroots things. Like you probably can tell, we don't have any fancy background. We don't have any like fancy logos behind us. We just, again, want to showcase that the average person, if they have the spirit and the inspiration, can make a change. You don't need a lot of money. You just need maybe like your phone and access to social media. So we encourage everybody, if you're so inspired by it, to make a donation to Revitalize. We will match that up to $5,000. And as Jim said, we have many more surprises in store for these Changemakers. We want to continue to support them in various ways, including financially.
Yeah. And so I'd like to, Larry, unless you have an objection, I'd like to get right into it.
Great.
We had an opportunity to sit down with a gentleman by the name of Larry Kindbaum, and many of you might know that name. He was the head football coach at Washington University for a number of years in St. Louis, and he was inspired to take incredible action in support of an amazing cause. And we're going to hear his story right now. So let's cue it up. All right, everybody, we are back. Welcome back to Changemakers21. I'm here with Larry Kinbaum. Larry, welcome to the show.
Jim, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's really funny how these things sometimes happen. When we receive a nomination, we talk to everybody and just see, do they fit what we're looking for? Are they truly a change maker? And you and I had a really long conversation. It ended up being over an hour because the reason why I thought we were talking and you thought we were talking ended up not being the reason why we brought you on here today. So I'm really excited to be speaking with you. But a lot of our audience, unless you're into college football and are familiar with your background, may not know who you are. So can you share a little bit about your story and your background?
Sure. Yeah, I've been the head football coach at Washington University here in St. Louis from 1989 up through 2019 and had retired at the end of that season. And the guy that they hired, lo and behold, was a guy that had played for me and asked me to come back. So after being a head coach, not just here, but back in Ohio for 38 years, I'm now an assistant again and getting to serve young men in my sport in a different way than I have for so long. And I'm absolutely loving being an assistant coach.
That's perfect. And I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to breeze through some of the things that we talked about and get to the point of why we wanted you to be a part of Changemakers21. And I think, as much as anyone we've ever talked to, Larry, you exemplify what a change maker is. So it truly is an honor to be talking with you. Now, you've done a lot with athletes and you've done a lot of things to support your community. And I could go through and give the laundry list of that. But what really got me going is you told me a story. And that story led you to a relationship that led you to making a huge impact all around various places in the United States with teams and turning. I don't want to do it a misjustice. So can you first tell the story about you called it the midlife crisis where you decided you were going to run a marathon?
Sure. Well, that's the story. I just felt at one point in my life that, I really like to have a mission to do something and decided I was going to run a marathon. My wife was a half marathon runner and had done a marathon herself and convinced me that was a good thing to do. And I just needed motivation. We all need motivation. So my motivation came for every mile that I would run in my practice that I'd put a penny in a bottle and try to fill the bottle up with pennies. And then at the time that I ran the marathon, I didn't know how many miles that would be or how many pennies, but I'd find a charity to give that to. And as I was looking through charities that I thought might be worthwhile, I stumbled across this thing called the Jason Foundation, which was about teenage suicide and depression. And at first, just looking for a charity, but all of a sudden becoming very educated on mental health and youth, and even read that 1 in 7.5 college-age kids have actually either been greatly depressed or thought of committing suicide. And I thought, there's no way, especially working here at Washington University, we have a very selective group of academic students, athletes that I work with. There's no way that 1 in 7.5 people, 1 in 8 people have thought about suicide or depression. And I asked one of my players, did he think that was true among his age group and his peers? And he looked at me and he said, "Coach, that's probably about right." And I was totally shocked. I've been very much into positive mental attitude my whole life, and just couldn't imagine there being that high of an incidence. And this was back in 2007 of people that had gone through those dark thoughts of that process. So what I did is I said, okay, then that's where my donation's going to go. And I let some of my players know that, hey, you're welcome to join in. You can never put in more than a penny a mile. So if I run 5 miles, you can't put in more than a nickel. But overall, we ended up with $783 or $785 somewhere in there. to be able to give them by the time I ran the marathon. But what happened in the process was I educated and became educated in what was going on with today's youth and mental health. And now, even more than back then, we know that that's such a big issue, but it became a very important part of my life. And I've shared that with our players, and now we've shared that with the community in different ways to be able to educate people and do more than that, be able to help people maybe not get into that position in the first place where they could have those kind of thoughts.
And that's amazing. Larry, you talked about one of the things that you learned being in a team sport environment and how you took that to, I don't want to misquote, but how you took that to, I believe, the high school level and up, and you were instrumental in helping to either create or support the creation or implementation of a program that was designed to take the team sports mindset and translate that in. And you shared some things about kids eating lunch alone. Can you touch on that for just a minute? Sure.
So I connected with Clark Flatt, because that was the charity that I had actually looked to first, called the Jason Foundation. And I called him on the phone, didn't know who he was. I just asked, what his role was, and he told me he was the CEO of this foundation. And I said, well, tell me how you got involved, and found out that the foundation, the name Jason Foundation, Jason was his son. So he was a father who had a son who ended up taking his own life. And Clark decided that he was going to turn his life out of the business world and move into something where he could actually maybe have an impact on lives of young people. So that inspired me even more to say, well, then what can I do? I mean, here's a guy that is going out and speaking to state legislatures and getting to try to change bills pass bills at the state level to be able to have more centers, more health, more ways to educate people about suicide and depression at the teenage level. And what we came to was working with our players, and I had another assistant coach, Dennis Snap, where we decided that, my gosh, we have people here that are going to be able to speak, and students respond to students, high school students respond to college students, high school athletes respond to college athletes. So then, rather than go out and maybe speak at something that I'm not most qualified, we harnessed our talent here at WashU, and each year we'd have several of our players that would put together like a speakers bureau, and we talk with high school teams, sometimes like all the captains at a high school, just various groups. We try to get between 6 and 8 every year, and just not to talk about suicide and depression, because our guys aren't necessarily experts at that either. But the thing that they are experts at is team building. They've been part of teams. And how cool would it be if we could talk with a group of people at the high school level and challenge that group of people to take into their school a team building kind of an effort? How can we turn our high school into a team so that when we walk in the cafeteria and we see little Johnny or Sally sitting all by themselves and basically not being able to connect, and say, you know what, if we could teach our groups to be proactive and turn that into a team, give people a sense of belonging to something more than just the name of a high school, but the group of people that are in that high school. And our guys can do that because they know what it takes to be in a team. They know what it's like to have to come back from adversity, or be able to talk with each other at a real level. When you're on a team, a football team, you certainly have to be able to tell people, hey, you might not be starting the game, but you're really important to what goes on here. Everybody plays a role. And who can better say that than the athletes that we had here at WashU, to be able to talk to all these various high schools. And the project went well. We partnered with the Jason Foundation and let them know we're not going to go in and talk about suicide and depression, but what we are going to do is talk about team building and how you can maybe bring people into the group that might feel right now isolated or alone. And it's been quite an endeavor over the years. It's taken us to a lot of places and got us into some very deep conversations. And our guys have a really neat way of doing it. It isn't just the message, it's the way the message is delivered through our players that makes it really special.
Yeah, I think what's really, and not to use the word you just used, but what's really special about what you've done and what you are a part of is, for those of you that don't know the schedule of a football coach, you don't have a lot of free time, right? Even in the off season. And when you're coaching at a college level, it's even more demanding. And so you were able to do this in the time that you had and get so many other people involved. And, I know there were times where you've had an impact. I know there were times where it missed the mark, where it could have been more, but maybe people didn't understand what was going on. So what I want to say to you is, I don't know that you have any idea how many people's lives you probably saved, but if just one, I mean, I think your efforts were worth it. But it isn't necessarily them, but it's the lives that they went on to touch. So do you have any particular success stories or things that you can share, someone that's come back to you? And obviously we want to be respectful and not use names unless you have permission to use names, but any success stories from the program that you can share?
Well, first of all, I have one big success story from being able to learn from this, and it's been me. We always have thought, especially in the coaching profession, we're all about relationships. Now, most people look at us and say, well, winning is everything. And it's like, no, not really. We want to win. I mean, that's part of a mission of what a team likes to do. They want to be successful. And when you play a sport, winning is part of what it means to be successful. But what really is the underlying factor are the relationships that you have and you build. And through this process, what we've seen is the very thing that we're talking about to these high school groups about building within their own school a team kind of a framework is something that every time our own athletes have talked about that and have listened to the high school, because it's a two-way street. We're learning from them as they're learning from us. They're building a relationship. When you listen to people, there's a relationship that's built. Everybody wants to belong. Everybody wants to be a part of something. And a lot of reason for the mental health. And I know it boils down to a lot of things, the chemistry in the brain, and every story is unique on why people fall away from, relationships with other people. But the bottom line is relationships are the one thing that can open the door that may end up making a difference in terms of the way somebody wakes up every morning and the way somebody feels like they're a part of something. So how blessed was I to be part of a group and listening to high school and college students talk back and forth about some very real stuff. Feeling lonely or feeling out of it, or recognizing that somebody else is out of it. But what do I do? What do I say? And to have people come to a conclusion that sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, what's up? To somebody who's sitting all by themselves, and you mind if I just sit down with you and get to know you a little bit? And knowing that has totally maybe changed somebody's life. So relationships are important. And I've always felt my role as a coach, my definition of a coach is somebody who's going to take somebody else, somebody who's going to be coached, to some place that they may not have gotten themselves. So it doesn't say anything about winning. It doesn't say anything about making you necessarily a better person, no judgments on character, but taking you someplace that you kind of want to go, but maybe you can't get there by yourself. And what happens then is, as we think we're coaching those kids are also coaching us. And they take their messages back into their schools, and we would give them homework assignments and we'd leave them after 2.5 hours and, high-fiving each other. And they feel good about the fact that they just spent 2.5 hours talking about how they can make their own school better. and doing it with things that they know, the template of being part of a team. And, so when you ask me, there are specific examples. Yeah, when we were going through the whole thing with Ferguson, our players met with the Berkeley football team, Ferguson, that most of us can look back, and we all have different memories of what that whole instance has taught us as people and as a country. But what I saw was an engagement of people at Washington University on our football team meeting with these high school kids, and really the relationship that was built, the conversation, the dialogue that took place earned both groups a greater understanding of what the other group was going through, all with the purpose of how can you make your school a better school at a time when most people wouldn't think those are the big issues there. It's like it's an issue for every high school kid in America. Nobody wants to see somebody sit by themselves in the in the cafeteria, right? Nobody wants to see themselves be around somebody who's depressed, or maybe even getting the story that somebody's taken their own life. And how do you do that without talking about that directly? And for me, it has been, well, you build a template of relationships within your school where people want to be a part of that school. And how cool is that? Washington University, Berkeley High School at the time, and we're not talking politics, we're not talking racial division, we're not talking, how do you feel about those things as much as we're talking about, how are you doing, man? I mean, how are you really doing? And
Right.
having people open up and say, hey, I just want to be good. I want to be successful. Or one young man in that group who says, I just want to go to school and play football and be around my friends. And it's like, yeah, isn't that kind of what school is all about? Not necessarily football, but being able to do the extracurricular stuff with your friends and just being there and
Sure.
having a good time as you're learning. So that's been my take on it, Jim. But it's been great, and I think the message about depression and suicide, mental health, then becomes part of those conversations because people can talk about them being real.
Well, and I think it's really amazing that again, searching for the right words, the growth, the increased awareness around mental health and teenage depression and suicide is really, in the last 5 years or so, it's really expanded quite a bit. And there's an understanding around it, not enough of an understanding around it, but you guys were really ahead of your time and aware of what was going on before it became mainstream to understand those things. So I want to ask you one last question, and we went long. I apologize. We try and keep these 8 to 10 minutes, but your content has been amazing, and the things that you're sharing are so relevant. And I'm hoping that somebody sees this and hears what they need to hear. But for those that might hear your story, Larry, and think, man, I wish I could do something. And they think, well, I'm not a big football coach, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the time. I think everybody has the ability to do something. And I'd like for you to share, just in the last 30 seconds that we have here, for somebody that might be inspired by you, how can they take some action, like today or tomorrow, but in the immediate future? What's your words of wisdom?
Well, I'd say when you're walking down the street and you're passing somebody, you don't look down at the ground. You don't look off in the distance. You maybe give a second of your time or a piece of your heart, be able to say hello. How are you? Who knows? That might make a difference. Being able to smile and not be thinking about politics and I know all the different things that we feel affect us right now, but actually look at somebody and in that short amount of time, be able to build the kind of relationship, as shallow as it may seem, but a smile does a lot. And, positive mental attitude, those things to me are all very, very important when you do engage in conversations. So people look at that and say, wow, that just made me feel better about what goes on. And that's really what we did in a much more structured way, I guess. But be aware of your fellow man. Right?
That's amazing. Larry, again, I think you shared this. Let me end on this note. You said one of the best success stories from this program was you. And I will tell you, when we made the decision to put out Changemakers, and I sit on the board for Revitalize, so it's a very personal thing for me to tell some of these stories. I think I shared with you, and I've shared with our audience previously, that the Ferguson incident was one of the reasons why I wanted to help paint St. Louis in a better light, which is why I joined what was at the time Revitalize St. Louis, and now it's expanded to a more global presence. But for me, hearing stories like yours and seeing people like you is why I wanted to be involved. So I just want to say thank you for being on here, and thanks for inspiring me and undoubtedly others listening. So thank you.
Well, thank you and Larry for all you guys have done. And again, all you're doing is bringing things up to the surface. You're doing the same thing that I just got done. When you asked me one thing I can recommend, what you're doing is you're opening the door for people to have relationships and to be able to grow. Here's your mindset, your growth mindset, to be able to grow as a person. And I thank you for that. I think that's absolutely awesome. So appreciate what you do.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to sitting down and having a Diet Dr. Pepper and a Diet Coke with you at some point in the near future. But guys, stay tuned. Larry, thank you again. We've got more Changemakers coming up. If you like what you heard, make sure you get a chance to visit our website. There's some information on there that you can find on Larry and how to get involved. So thanks again so much for being on here, and more Changemakers coming up right now.
So I love that interview, Jim. It was great. And I want to share just a couple insights that I have, and that's about the team concept. And I feel like perhaps more than ever, or at least recently, we are so fragmented as a society, and we're fragmented within each of our communities. And I love the team concept, because a team, no matter if it's a business team or a sports team, whatever type of team it is, there are different players playing different roles. Like you can't have a baseball team and everyone plays first base. So the team concept, if we can learn to embrace it, means that someone on the team might be the disruptor. Someone on the team might be the visionary. Someone on the team might be the mechanical person to put it together. Someone on the team might do something else. But so often when we're looking at our communities, we want everybody, we say to be on the same team, but really we want the same type of player. And it's important to have the diversity, because every person, in my opinion, every person deserves to be heard. And I think most people, 99.9% of us, if you look at whatever community you're in, we may have different avenues or different paths to creating a better community, but everybody wants the better community. So I just really want to emphasize that it's important to have that team. And I love what he said about the penny, because a penny is mostly insignificant to all of us. So think of whatever community you're in. We're in St. Louis. There's nearly 3 million people here. If everybody donated a penny a day, that would be $30,000 a day that we could raise without affecting anybody. But the issue is that we're all not on the same team. So one of the missions of Revitalize, if you check us out, is creating communities in unity. And I thank Larry Kinbaum for emphasizing that team concept. And we hope that through tonight and through the other interviews, we can help create some unity in your community.
Yeah, can I say something, Larry, real quick?
Sure.
So it was really, it's really humbling talking to some of these change makers, because you feel like you're doing something, and like you hear what he's doing, and I'm like, man, I got to step up my game. And I took down a quote that he said, and I want to read it back, and it's paraphrased, so it may be a little off. So Mr. Kinbaum, if I get it wrong, I apologize. But it says, give a second of your time. It could make a difference. Actually look at someone and build a relationship. A smile does a lot. And it was really humbling. I got emotional a couple times listening to that, because as he was talking, I had just learned the story of Jason, the young man that he was referencing. And again, very, very humbling experience to get to talk to somebody that is literally changing the world like they are.
That's great. So we have a great interview coming up next.
Yeah, you did this one.
Yes,
You've got
I
to cue this up. This is Angela Baptiste.
Angela Brannon Baptiste. And I knew Angie when Angie and I lived in Phoenix, and now she's in San Diego, and I caught up with her and listened to what Angie has created in San Diego. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Changemakers21. I'm here with a very special guest, and she's very special because I've known her for about 30 years. I've known her family, but through the years, we lost track of each other a little bit. And then when social media started coming on, I began to follow her and knew she was doing some amazing things in San Diego. But when actually her sister nominated her as a Changemaker21 honoree, and I connected with Angie earlier today, and she's doing some amazing things. So this is Angela Brannon Baptiste, and I would like to welcome you as a Changemaker21 and invite you to share a little bit of your background and what you do.
Well, hi, and thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see you again. Of course, Facebook has brought us back together, but this is such an amazing opportunity. So thank you so much for inviting me. I am the co-founder and president of the board of It's All About the Kids Foundation. We started about 17 years ago by basically helping other charities do things they couldn't do. So we did all kinds of things like buy uniforms for kids. I did a lot of mentoring. I mentored high school homeless teenagers. And so that was an amazing process going through that. And then in 2017, we decided to focus on food. We realized that we were doing too many things. And my mentor told me to pick one thing and do really, really good at it. And so we decided on food. My background was I had worked for USDA and both the state of New Hampshire and the state of California in food programs. So I tucked all that away in my head because I did that right after you and I worked together, and then went to work for myself in private business. And then I started my charity back 17 years ago. So when we decided on food, we just started small, wanted to make sure that it worked, made a wonderful partnership with the San Diego Food Bank. And we started to take bags of food to a local school, the King Chavez Primary School. We'd given them bicycles before, so they liked us already. And we went to the principals and said, can we give fresh produce and non-perishable food to your families when they pick them up from the 6 to 6 program? And they said, sure. When they come to get the kids, give the food away. It started small with 30 families our first week. And within 4 months, we were at 150 families.
Wow.
With an average of 5 people per family. That's a lot.
Yes.
We were growing steadily with a meal is a pound of food. So we went from, a small U-Haul truck to a bigger U-Haul truck. And then we moved into our own pantry. That was in 2018. And the numbers increased. By the time we got into 2019, we were over 1,000. And then right before COVID hit, we were at 1,000, almost 1,400 families were coming to see us every single month.
That's amazing.
But then COVID hit.
Sure.
And everything accelerated, I should say. We were asked to continue our food distributions, but yet we went outside into a drive-through and a walk-up, in which we went very quickly to 1,000 families in one day, with 400 to 500 cars and hundreds of people walking up to receive food from us. So then we made a partnership with Feeding San Diego, and we started receiving 2 semi-trucks in one day. So we're talking, 2 semi-trucks, between 40 to 60,000 pounds of food that we and a team of amazing volunteers, we would pack into bags, and then we would distribute the same day. It was long, it was hard, it was amazing. So just to put it in perspective, from September of 2017 until April of 2020, we did 1 million meals. But from April 2020 to April 2021, we did 2 million meals.
Oh my gosh. So it's easy to see why you were nominated as an honoree for a Changemaker, but also what inspired me when I heard your story and what inspired us to nominate you as a change maker is you've had so many challenges along the way. So in order to do what you do, I'm just guessing you had to have a deep inspiration, a deep love or commitment or vision to what you're doing. What was your inspiration behind this? Why did you start this?
You know, after when I was a little kid, of course, my mom taught us empathy and always had us involved in doing things for the community and charity work. And then I went to work for the government after college and learned how to run a food program, but not exactly how to serve people. So I really, when, I went to work for other companies and I worked in the corporate world, and I kept trying to get the corporate world to do good things. And it was really hard then. It wasn't popular back then.
Right.
And so I finally just quit my job and said, this is what I want to do. I want to help kids. This is in me, because every time I work for someone else, I go back to having parties and doing things for kids. And I just love doing it. So my inspiration was actually the children. I knew that if I put all my talents together and everything I'd ever learned, and then a great network of people that I had built through my businesses and through having parties and fundraisers, that I knew that I could succeed. And it's been quite a journey. It's been a struggle. It's been fantastic.
What have been a couple of your biggest challenges that you've faced?
Over the 17 years, the biggest challenge has been the economy. When the economy has crashed or gone and not done nice things to people over the years, it took its toll on charities. Also, fraud took its toll on charities. When the big charity does something really bad, smaller charities, people overlook us because they turn their faces away from wanting to donate to charity. So those have been struggles. The last year has been the hardest year that we have ever worked as a charity, the most we have ever done. And we've had to move 4 times because we had so many people come to see us that we had to get bigger and bigger, but getting bigger brought more problems with traffic, police.
I mean, just moving 4 times, that's quite an accomplishment that you continue to, persevere and go forward. When you think back, Angie, what would you say is like one of your biggest successes that you're most proud of?
It's hard to pick one.
Sure.
Because there's been many, especially with the success of the homeless teens that I got the opportunity and the honor to mentor when they've gone off. One has his doctorate. I have a few that have gotten their master's degrees. Very, very successful. Many are married with children. That to me is one of my best success stories. But I also think that the creation of our solar pantry is one of the most amazing things, other than when you hit 1 million meals and then 2 million and then 3 million. That was amazing. But the creation of the solar pantry. So when we were with our little pantry that we had, that we would see a couple hundred people a day. Now understand there's a couple hundred families. So they bring the kids and grandma, abuela, etc. So, we would have thousands of people come and see us. And so we had no storage. So it would get pretty tricky and kind of scary at the end of the food distribution. Would we have enough? Do we know how many people are coming? We have a text message program, but we still didn't know exactly how many people were going to come. Right. So I love shipping containers and I am a problem solver. So I decided, what if we took made it a solar pantry, took a shipping container and put solar on the roof and refrigerated it, because then I wouldn't need to pay the electricity bill, because it's very expensive to pay the electricity bill on a huge refrigerator or a freezer of any kind. And as a charity, we can't afford those things. So I called my friends at the IBEW 569, the Electrical Workers Union. There are a couple of females called the United Sparkies, and they got together all the Electrical Workers Union women and started an organization, and they helped us build it with the help of Steve Stepp and some other amazing people. We worked with 3 unions, the Iron Workers Union, as well as the Insulation Workers Union. And now we have a 20-foot shipping container that on one side is a roll-up door and it's dry, and that's 1/4 of the container. And then 3/4 of it is insulated and refrigerated, and it actually can go to freezing. and
That's
it's powered
amazing.
by the solar panels on the roof.
Yeah, that's
So not only can you store food inside of it, but you can distribute out of it in case you don't have any, a brick and mortar, for example, if you don't have your own pantry. But it enables us to continue to get fresh fruits and vegetables to the children, because that's what we do. We feed kids, and we do as much fresh fruits and vegetables as we can, because we know that's, number one, very expensive, and number
Right.
two, hard for the kids and that live in the food deserts to get the food.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you are really creative to, take a problem like that and then assemble a group of people and come up with a solution. So I'm like so impressed about your organization. I invite everybody to check it out further, but I want to ask you one other question before we leave. And that is, there's a lot of people watching this evening that probably want to do something in their community. They perhaps have an inspiration the same way that you did, but like, how do you start and how do you deal with the challenges? So what advice would you have to anybody out there that has a bit of a dream, a bit of a passion about improving their community, but doesn't really know what the next step is?
I'm asked that question. I actually coach charities and also people on how to start a charity. And I tell them, first of all, don't start your own charity. It is really, really hard, as you well know. It takes tons of resources. I think for most people, what I suggest is whatever your passion is, there's lots of fantastic charities out there. So date them, okay? So pick your favorite 3 or 4 and go and volunteer for them and see how they run their organization and see how their mission is maybe similar to your mission. So then what you do is you become asked to become part of their charity by either becoming a board member, becoming a volunteer, work your way up the food chain in that charity. Because if people come to me, which they do, and say, we want to help you, but we want to come and we want to volunteer, those are the best kind of people that we need, and they can help steer me. So we've had board members that say, yes, we want to come and sit on your board. Now I've got help, solid help, because us, small and middle range charities who do amazingly big things, we need a strong board of directors, but we also need a strong team of volunteers. And also peer-to-peer fundraising is done with volunteers and people who believe in you. So my advice is find the charity that is equal to what your passion is.
That's
and then
great advice.
Help them. We always need help, and you don't have to do it by yourself.
Right.
Because
so
it's
join
really,
a team.
really hard. Yeah.
Join a team. Well, Angie, thank you so much for joining us. And it was so great to connect with you. And I know now that we're reconnected, we'll be continuing this journey together. I wish you and your organization much success. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you so much, because I am so honored to be chosen and to be part of this organization. And oh yeah, you're stuck with me now. You're not going to be here to get rid of me now for sure, because we're happy to be part of the family. And thank you again so much. And of course, congratulations to all the other nominees. And thank you to everyone who's watching. I think that it's wonderful that they care and they want to watch and see what's going on in the world. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. What an inspirational story. I mean, the thing that I took away from this, and Larry, I'm going to bring you on to get your take on it as well, but her resiliency, as we wait for Larry to come back on. Maybe we're not going to get Larry. All right, we'll take Larry away. Maybe we won't get him this time. He'll be back, I'm sure. He'll be back sooner than later. But her resiliency was absolutely amazing. She took a problem that she identified, and look, we all encounter challenges trying to get things done. And her biggest challenge was corporate America wasn't supportive. This was before they were socially responsible businesses. And I'm sure she encountered struggle after struggle after struggle, which she highlighted in this video. And it just goes to show that if you have the resolve to get things done, that's when things get done. And for me, this is a huge thing. We talked about the challenges that both Larry and I had, and a lot of the other change makers had here when we were putting this together. And it was really just the reality of the situation, that things are going to happen that are beyond your control. And it isn't what happens to you, It's what you do about what happens. And after this next video, we're going to share with you exactly how to go about supporting these change makers. As we roll into the next hour here, we're going to talk about what you can do to support, what you can do to do your part, and what's in store for the change makers as we continue to take this next leap towards the evolution of Revitalize. And join us for more change makers. Here comes Mr. Jerome Harris. All right, Changemakers21, we are back. We are with Jerome Harris. Jerome, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, man. I'm truly honored to have you on here. You and I go back, I don't know, 6-8 months now. We were talking Revitalize before Revitalize became what it is today.
Yeah.
You helped us kind of talk about what our mission was going to be and where we were going to go as we were talking through the evolution of our own organization while heading up another organization. So let's start there. Tell us what you do.
So I'm the founding president of Urban Golf of Greater St. Louis, where we develop students in golf education, after school programming that has a myriad of programming like social emotional learning, etiquette, all those things, and also academic support. So we support our kids in their academic process in school.
So, Jerome, I probably should have covered this with you before we get started, but if I touch on something that is not something you want to talk about, just feel free to call me out and say, let's go. But I'm gonna be really brutally honest with a lot of the things that I say. And I do a segment for my own brand called Unapologetically Us, my business partner and I. So I'm just going to be a little unapologetic here and say this. There's a lot of organizations that do things after school. And what I thought was really unique about your organization, and the reason why I was so happy to see that you were nominated as a change maker, is you take something that traditionally had been seen as set up for a whole nother class of people, a whole nother group of people, a whole nother type of person, and you bridge that gap, which I think is amazing. And you're really crushing stereotypes, which I absolutely love. And I'm curious why you felt inspired to go this direction. Are you a golfer yourself?
Yeah, I play golf, and I tell people that golf chose me. I didn't choose golf. I didn't grow up. Golf wasn't offered in our community, in our school, in the rec centers that I went to as a kid. Golf wasn't offered as a sport. We played other sports like soccer, basketball, football, things of that nature, tennis even. But golf was never, you know, it was never presented to us as something to pursue. And so within my work and community organizing and, community leadership, an opportunity came up to work with the PGA Foundation,
Oh, wow.
a Reach Foundation Gateway section. And it is through my work in community that, I was able to partner and learn a lot of the, integral things about golf and the sport. And, it really just kind of expanded for me. And in that research and involvement, I stumbled upon the Black contribution of the game of golf. Golf is generally viewed as a wealthy white sport, members only sort of deal. But if you go back past Tiger Woods, the Black contribution is major in the game of golf. And I'll just give you one fact here that you probably didn't know, that you can't start the game without starting off of the tee. Can't start the game without starting off the tee. A Black man invented the tee. I believe his name is George Grant, has patented and invented the golf tee, when guys were walking around the country club with bags of sand, hitting the ball off of a pile of sand, and the list goes on about the Black contribution to the sport, that it is, I take sort of personal to really expose all of these things and opportunities and this community to the students that we serve.
I think that's great. So I used to tell a joke, and it probably isn't funny, but I'll tell you anyway. And it's that I was once labeled a golf prodigy until I finished the story. So the first time I ever played golf, I shot a 70.
Okay. Wow.
First time ever. After those 3 holes, I quit. It was terrible. I was so bad at golf. It wasn't good.
That was good. That's good.
So yeah, I'm not good at golf. But you know what? I want to step back and say I didn't know those things that you just told me about the contribution. What I always find so amazing about Changemakers, and again, one of the reasons why I was so excited to see your name come across the desk of people that were nominated, is that they break down all these barriers of what is supposed to be, right? Like it didn't matter to you what was supposed to be the way that it was supposed to be, because you saw the way that it could be. And that's amazing to me. So I'd like to hear from you some of the success stories, if you could, some of the kids that you've worked with. And I'd like to hear it kind of broad spectrum, right? You talk about academia, you talk about the physical side of it, you talk about safety, because after school, the danger zone is that 3 to 6, I'm told. After school is really a rough time. I think that's probably where you're engaged a lot. So can you share one or two success stories real quickly?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of success stories, but our mission is to prepare students to be successful beyond high school, and we use golf to do that. And so we don't uh, we don't dictate, or we don't tell our students what success is, because success for one kid is just making it to school every day, without
For sure.
overcoming a lot of the obstacles and things of that nature that they have at home. And so we have conjured up a picture of success, college graduates, people who are in great jobs and things of that nature, but because we take an individualized approach to our student development, we are able to understand what success looks like for our students. And so I have these girls that I've been bragging on. They're juniors in college now, but the road to get there was very tough. It was very difficult, especially with attitudes and short tempers and things of that nature. So success for me is not just that they are on a full ride, college scholarship, free paid tuition for school, but the success story for me is they were able to overcome themselves, that they were able to overcome
Wow.
their short fuses, to be able to use their God-given intuition, intellectual ability to apply themselves to deal with very I would say to deal with every situation thoughtfully, to manage themselves. And so that's the success story for me. Not just that they're in college about to graduate and they don't have to pay for anything, and that's great. But the success story for me is that they were able to overcome certain barriers that may have been hereditary.
So, Jerome, I'm going to ask you another pretty straightforward question. Why do you do what you do?
That's a great question. I do what I do because the kids that I serve was me. Growing up in the city of St. Louis, single parent household. You know, no real accountability to our lives. And so I was a part of the community centers and the recreational centers and things of that nature, and you know, big brothers, big sisters, and all that good stuff. And my big brother at the time, Ray Dennis, he gave me a picture of options that I could have. Bill Hybels, I believe, in his book, he says, "Vision is a picture of the future that produces passion." And it is through
Taking notes.
the influence of my big brother that I got a picture of what my future could be, and it produced passion in me, not to just exist in that picture, but to expose other young people to that picture that produces passion, that continues to produce passion, that will change the narrative or change a picture to what our kids are viewed as.
That's great. Now, I will tell everybody that is watching this, and I'm going to put this up on the screen here, that we are going to put a link. And if you go to our website, arevitalizedworld.org, and you go to the Changemakers tab, you will see Urban Golf on there. And you'll have an opportunity, if you make a donation to Revitalize through this event, you can tag Urban Golf as a recipient of a portion of that donation to make sure that we're continuing to pay it forward and support those that do so much in the community. In 30 seconds or less, Jerome, tell us, or tell the people listening that may be inspired by your story or what you're doing, that maybe don't feel like they can do as much as you've done or start where you've started. Tell people how they could just get started doing something. Just a 30-second word of advice to close us out.
30-second word of advice is use your experiences, use your the blessings that God has given to you to create or to really culminate something that you could do. God uses our abilities, our experiences to really just challenge us to do more of how we were changed. So it's through our change that we can be change makers.
Fantastic. Tell your website real quick so people can hear it.
www.ugolfstl.org. That's U as in the letter U, ugolfstl.org.
Awesome. Jerome, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on being one of the inaugural 2021 Changemakers. And look forward to watching your progress and seeing more of what you're going to do. Thanks for being on here with us. All right, guys, stay tuned. More Changemakers coming up in just a moment.
Insights that I took away from that. And I love what he talks about success, that everybody has a different concept of success. And depending upon where you are in life, that success looks different to each of us. So just I'll share personally with everybody out there that I've had my problems, I've had addiction, and my level of success at one point in life was just not picking up a crack pipe that day. Now that is not the level of success that most people strive to in life. But for me, just not picking up that pipe that day was my level of success. And I like what Jerome said, that it's different for everyone, and that he wants these kids to overcome themselves and to overcome their stories. And for some people, for some kids, it's not about getting the A's, and it's not about getting into this school. It's just about getting to school every day. So I really thank Jerome for what he does for the St. Louis community and for the love and the inspiration and the guidance that he gives our youth here in St. Louis. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Jim?
All right. Yeah, it was really interesting. Jerome goes back a little ways for us. We talked to him about Revitalize about a year ago and what we were doing, and he offered some advice and insight. Just an amazing individual. I want to make one correction, and I also want to make the announcement as we go into this that you can help support the Changemakers. So how you do that is you go to our website. You can't fake live. It's just the way it is, Larry. go to our website, arevitalizedworld.org, and you can do a revitalizedworld.org/changemakers, and you will see an opportunity to make a donation to revitalize, a donation to support the storytelling of these amazing change makers from around the world. Coming up, we've got Brother Anthony Glover. We've got Caitlin, a ton of people going to be featured here in just a few minutes as we continue. But you can select them, one of them, all of them, as a change maker. And a portion of that donation will be matched and sent in support of those individuals featured here on Changemakers21. Larry, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. Well, on top of that, on top of that, that donation will be matched up to $5,000 by Jim and myself. So your donation will go miles and dollars further. And we thank you for your consideration.
All right. Cue us up, Larry. Brother Anthony is next.
Brother Anthony is from Phoenix, Arizona, which is my adopted hometown. I spent about 25 years of my life there. Amazing gentleman doing, like, talk about giving from the heart and just giving from the spirit. That is how I would classify Brother Anthony. So take it away.
All right, everybody. We are back with more change makers, and we have someone on here that I'm excited to introduce the world to. I just really learned his story, got a referral from a gentleman that I think the world of, and he said, you got to talk to Brother Anthony. And I said, who's Brother Anthony? And he said, isn't that why you're doing this program? So people that you don't know their stories, you get to hear them. I said, well, as a matter of fact, it is. So, man, I'm excited to have you here, Anthony Glover. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So this is really what Changemakers was all about. And for those of you that are just tuning in, what Changemakers21 is, it's highlighting the stories of 45 changemakers for the year 2021 from all over the world that are making a difference and sharing the stories that you otherwise wouldn't hear. And Brother Anthony's story is one of those. So he was nominated because he is a change maker in the, am I saying this right, in the Phoenix, Arizona area?
Yes, yes.
And actively involved in a ton of things, teaching young men and all men life skills. So let me see if I get the list right. You're an author, a foundation creator, starter, owner, nonprofit leader. You volunteer your time, and on top of that, you're a poet. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct. I am an LLC. I'm not a nonprofit yet, but I'm an LLC. Yes.
That's fantastic. You know what I think is really cool, and that's what's great about this. When we first did the Changemaker series for Revitalize, we highlighted 15 nonprofits. And what I found in here, I love hearing the stories. The nonprofits, you know what they do, you know what they're about. But there's other businesses and there's people that are doing things that are so great. And your story is one of those. Congratulations on being recognized as a change maker. And I'm just going to get right to this. What inspired you to do what you do? And let's start with the children's book.
Well, everybody that knows me knows that I love my city, my hometown, and my community. And as I get older, I just feel like I just want to do as much as I can to contribute to the empowerment of my community. The city of Phoenix has come a long way, and we're still growing. We're one of the fastest growing cities in America. And I just feel like I want to contribute to my city and my community and be involved in the movement, and as well as our youth in our community. The youth is something I feel like is the key to our community, to our future. So I feel like that's one area that I want to kind of stick to. And a lot of what I do is targeted towards the youth.
And you wrote a book. Tell us about the book.
Yes, I Can't Wait to Be a Man. So I wrote this book during the pandemic. So I've been a mentor for the past 5 to 6 years. We get to do all kinds of cool things and go out, have activities and trips. But when the pandemic hit, of course, that kind of shut a lot of it down. So I wanted to find a unique and a different kind of way I can reach out to young men, not just in my community, but around the world. And I figured, you know what? I can write a book and I can mail them my book. And then that way I can get at younger boys that are younger than the boys I usually mentor. So I decided to write a children's book called I Can't Wait to Be a Man. And it's narrated by a young boy who's excited, and he's talking about all the lessons and gems he received from his dad and his uncle about what it is to be the best man he can be. So every page has a specific lesson that he's talking about, whether it's chivalry, standing up for yourself, taking care of your responsibilities, just so many different lessons that young men can take right now and practice as boys while they're on their journey to becoming teenagers and ultimately men. So it's something like a reference book for young boys.
That's absolutely great. What now? Tell us about the 2-day workshop that you put on and that you do. What is that, and how did that come about?
Yes, Useful Hands PHX. It's a 2-day program where I teach young men how to use a charcoal grill, how to fish, essential auto care, and woodwork as well. And this was something I also created during the pandemic. The program that I've been mentoring with for the past 5 to 6 years is incredible. It's more of a classroom setting. Every now and then we take trips and have different activities. But out of all the mentors, I'm kind of like the country boy of the crew. And they all know I like to work with my hands. I like to fix things. I like to build things. And some of the things that we weren't doing in the program, I wanted to create a program on the side and, kind of do something on my own. So it was more of a hands-on experience. And I noticed a lot of the young men that I mentor over the past 5 to 6 years, I want to say 90% of them do not have fathers, nor uncles, because Phoenix is a city where a lot of people move to. So when they move out here with their mothers, they have no family around, no uncles. So a lot of me and my guys consider ourselves community uncles. So we're going to be the uncle in the city, in the community. And I wanted to kind of fill that void of the positive male figure in their life. So they could take our program, and then also we have my program, Useful Hands PHX, where I can teach them how to change a flat tire, teach them how to cook their own food on the charcoal grill, not be so scared of using the fire, teach them how to fish and teach them how to fix things. And just in case they're around the house and the mom needs some help, they will know how to do certain things around the house. They will know how to change the tire if it needs to be done. And I just kind of want to equip them with different skills they can take as young men to take on their journey as men to manhood as well.
That's great. Well, when I heard about you, the gentleman, Harold Branch, HB, to his friends and people that know him, said, this is a guy that never fails to show up no matter who needs him. And that was listed in your nomination form, which I thought was really, really telling, because there's so many people that are like, let me know if I can do anything, until you ask them if they can do anything. And then like, whoa, hold on. I didn't know you were really going to ask, right? But you show up and do things throughout your community and mentor these young men and have provided some great things. What inspired you? Why did you get involved in this?
Well, someone who has a father that got to teach me all kinds of different things, the more I got involved into mentoring young men, and I realized how many of them didn't have fathers. And while at the same time feeling like I felt the future was our youth. When I realized that, I felt somewhat of an obligation or responsibility to start being more active and not just wait to be involved, but initiate different things. I just felt like there was so much in my city that wasn't happening. And I didn't want to be one of the people sitting back criticizing what we don't have and what we need. I wanted to initiate the things that we don't have and that we need in our community. So I just didn't want to be one of the people on the sidelines and talking about what we don't have. It was one day I had to say, you know what, I'm going to have to start initiating things. I'm going to have to start showing up without being asked to do it. And the more I started doing that, the more I wanted to keep doing it. And it started to grow. My passion started to grow. Every year, every month, every 2 years, my passion just kept growing and growing. It was like a snowball effect every year. And now it's almost like an addiction, an obsession to be involved in my community. I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. I plan on being involved in my community and the empowerment of my community until I'm an old man.
That's great, man. Well, let me give you the last 30 seconds to do two things. And if you need 30 seconds each, that's fine. But tell people how to get a hold of your book, for one, and how to get a hold of you and your organization if they're in the Phoenix area. How do they find you?
Yes, my book, I Can't Wait to Be a Man. That's the title of my book. And you can purchase my book on the website, ican'twaittobeaman.com. That is my website. And
so simple. If I could have picked it, it would have been just that. So well done.
Absolutely.
And what about go ahead.
UsefulHandsPHX.com. My program is called UsefulHandsPHX.com. And on that website, you can find all the videos and cool things that I do with the youth. There's a donation link on there. And if you're interested in enrolling, there's an enrollment link on there as well. And as far as Facebook and Instagram, Useful Hands as well. Useful Hands PHX.
Awesome, man. Congratulations on being selected. So here's what I want you to do in the last, as we close it out, and then we'll take it to we'll take it back to our co-host. But tell me this. There are going to be people that hear what you're doing. There are going to be people that are inspired to do something, but they're going to be scared. And that's okay. I was talking to one of the change makers and they said, my advice to you is do it afraid. Right. And I thought that was really cool. But for you, I'd like to have you share your words of wisdom, advice on someone that wants to do something. Where could they start? Maybe if they don't have the resources that you have, how do they get involved and do something?
Well, I actually get that question a lot because I get a lot of people who want to get involved with me and help out. They just don't know where to start. And I was at that stage as well. I wanted to do all these cool things, but I did not know where to start. I was just so overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with the beginning stage. And I had to just kind of accept that, you know what, you're going to bump your head. It's going to happen. So just start. Whatever kind of idea that you have in your head, just do it. Don't wait on it. Will you bump your head a couple of times? You might. You have to accept that. And once you accept that you might bump your head a couple of times and be comfortable with the idea of bumping your head, it's going to be so much easier, and you're going to get used to dodging, those bumps in the roads. So I would just say, just do it. Do it, like you said, do it scared, do it nervous, and don't be afraid to bump your head. It's going to happen. And the more you start doing it, the more strong you will get, and it'll get easier as you go.
Awesome. Brother Anthony, thank you so much for being on here. Congratulations on being selected in this initial class of Changemakers 2021 for Revitalize. There is a Revitalize Phoenix chapter. So for those of you that are in the Phoenix area, go to Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups. There's a chapter in Phoenix for Revitalize. And Brother Anthony, we'll make sure your information is listed there so people can find you as well. We're going to send it back to our co-host, Larry Cohn, as we continue with Changemakers 21.
Great. I hope Brother Anthony's listening right now because you touched me so much. Just your core spirit and your commitment to making Phoenix a better community. I spent most of my adult life there, and I know the problems that Phoenix faces, similar to other major metropolitan areas. But your raw passion to make it better, and just the heart and soul and the energy that you put into the kids, and I love just the practicality of it, like the grill and the fishing, and it's so authentic and it's so real and it's so inspirational to me. So we are going to connect more in the future. I have family in Phoenix. I look forward to really getting to know you more and taking your message further. And I wish we could just broadcast this nationwide, what you said about just how you can make a change and how your love for Phoenix is affecting the youth in Phoenix. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Larry, you ordered his book, did you not?
I did. I was watching the interview and I ordered the book. So I want to order more. So it's great.
Yeah, he's a great inspiration. And I'd like to say this. I'd like to do this for Brother Anthony. If the next 5 people that want to go to our website, thejimandlarryteam.com, hit the contact us and give us your name and address. The next 5 people, we'll send a Brother Anthony book. As long as we get it before the end of this broadcast, we'll send one of Brother Anthony's books to your home. So I'm really glad you guys are on here. We've got another exciting interview coming up. And Larry, I'll cue this one up if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So I met with Caitlin and heard her story of what she was doing, just one person making a difference. And you're going to hear a lot of the different things that she's involved in, but I think what you'll really hear more than anything is her passion and her grit, because that's what it takes to be a change maker, and she exemplifies that. So let's take a look at Caitlin's story. Okay, we're back this time with Caitlin. Oh, I practiced it. Tishka.
Tishka,
Did I
yes.
say it right? Tishka, got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Caitlin has been nominated as a 2021 Changemaker, and we're so excited to have her on here. But Caitlin, we have a global audience. I know we've got people on here from Australia because we've interviewed some people from Australia, so I know they're watching. But people all over the world, and probably the majority of them, if not all of them, have no idea who you are. So can you share a little bit about your background, where you're from?
Yeah, my name's Caitlin Tishka. As he said, I am originally from Southern Illinois, but I moved to St. Louis about 8 years ago. I started my career as a hairstylist out here then, and I still do that to this day. I'm now a 2-year salon owner. And yeah, it's been going great. You know, we survived COVID and all of that so far, so thank goodness. The business is thriving. We have a good space here in Tower Grove South, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the nomination.
Great. Well, the reason why you were nominated, and this is really fun for me because a lot of these interviews that we have done or will do are around nonprofits. And I love the nonprofits. I love what they do, but it sometimes makes other people feel like they can't take action because they don't have a nonprofit or they're not involved with one. And you were just that example. So you were nominated by someone here in St. Louis, and you were nominated because all of the little things that you do that add up to make a difference. So a couple of the things that we had talked about was, you know, providing supplies to protesters during various protests and rallies to make sure that they stay safe, that the events stay peaceful, all great things that you've done. We talked offline about a fire where you helped raise supplies and money for the people that were affected by the fire, and various other things, including a skate park that gives people an opportunity to come out and be safe in their space and get away from the things that might be troubling them. And what I'd like to do now is just kind of flip it back to you, and you can talk about any of those or anything else that you want to talk about. But my main thing that I want to know is what inspires you to do what you do, and why have you done it?
Well, I think just growing up, you know, I didn't come from like the easiest situations myself. And without getting too specific, I think that, you know, anytime you've fallen on troubled times, you kind of just always have a place in your heart for anybody that also has. So I think that's why certain situations and scenarios definitely hit home for me. And in the past, helping has been, I'm really good at organizing things. I'm really good at rallying. So it's a pretty simple thing for me to do that provides me in a productively selfish way a lot of happiness, you know, just because I know that feeling of like receiving that kind of generosity and stuff like that. And it also shows that I'm not the only one too. Whenever, you know, I might be the hub, but you can really see how much the community cares whenever you put these things together. When we raised supplies for the Black Lives Matter protests here in St. Louis, my salon was filled up from the front of the salon to the back of the salon with, I mean, we had people donate over 100 backpacks worth of medical supplies, Gatorades, waters, Band-Aids, all sorts of things that people could need. And whenever you see that people want to help too, they just sometimes need a hub, you know, by using my influence and stuff like that. It's a very easy thing for me to do. Very simple. You just put a PSA out there. Hey, if you want to help, we got you. We'll get the supplies to where they need to go. We'll get the money to where it needs to go. And just being that hub is a pretty simple thing for me to do that makes a big difference. So.
Well, that's great. And you've been involved. I don't even know if you'll know the answer to this. So sometimes it's good to prep. Sometimes it's good to be off the cuff. But do you even know how many different projects in the last couple of years that you've been involved in?
Well, when the pandemic hit, of course, there's been quite a few. There was a few less, just because we were all kind of staying in place for a moment. And I was mainly trying to rally to get my team and my shop safe. But in the past, I would say year and a half, we've done 4, I believe. Yeah. That's
amazing. And so many people, Caitlin, we've talked about this with other people, and I'm sure you know this is true, but so many people feel like they have to wait until they can do like something grandiose. And when someone like you comes along, it shows that a lot of people doing a little bit can make a huge difference. So have you encountered any challenges that are noteworthy with trying to put some of these things together?
Well, you know, depending on your cause, not everybody might celebrate that, especially whenever it's for very
I can
specific
relate.
communities, given that people can be a little divided on that subject matter. But whenever it comes to the business that I do, you know, I just let people know that this is from my heart, from the people that I work with and the people that I'm a part of, the communities that I'm a part of. And you just kind of got to let them know that and just let bygones be bygones. Still meet them with love and understanding, because that's probably the best influence you can give them.
No doubt.
But that's probably that was the biggest challenge, but that really wasn't even too bad, because where we're at here in St. Louis, it's a pretty collaborative community. We're all kind of in the same boat. But yeah, some people, you know, don't always understand why you want to help out certain communities. You can do your best to educate them through your example, I think.
That's huge. And there's a lot of people too, and I want to just give you kind of the last 30 to 60 seconds to share. But there's a lot of people that might feel like, well, I don't know how to get started, or I don't know how to do anything. But you've been involved in so many different causes, and you really centered or focused on a neighborhood or an area where you could make an impact. And I think that's a good, valuable lesson. But I don't want to steer the next part of this. I'd like for you to make a recommendation or throw out a tip for anybody that might be inspired by what you're doing or what you've done to take some action, and they don't know where to begin. What would you say to them?
Start with what you love and where you love to be. I try to do everything I can for my neighborhood because I love being here. I want to stay here. I want this neighborhood to keep thriving and doing well. That's why I lived here. I started living here 6 years ago before I started my business out here, and I wouldn't settle for any other space other than being right here in Tower Grove South, where I could be. Whenever you're in a tight-knit community like this, you know things that are going on. You can see despair and things that could be better. You might not know where to start, but you can start with those direct people. Whenever I heard about the fires that happened in our neighborhood, I went directly to sources that I knew that could potentially know who those people were, the property owners, the individuals themselves. You know, I contacted the salon that was affected immediately. So all you really have to do is be vulnerable and just kind of reach out, say, hey, is there anything that can be done? Where can we start? I wasn't sure if any of the other business owners would want to do anything to help the people that were affected by that fire, but until you ask, you won't know. So just really putting yourself out there just a little bit, whether it be email, text, stopping into the business itself, or sending a letter. You'd be surprised at how collaborative people actually want to be. Inherently, we all have more in common, I think, than we have different. And I think that most people, it does feel pretty good to do something good. And I think that sometimes whenever we're sitting in our homes too much and we're not, especially after this past year, interacting with so many people, it's hard to realize or even fathom that anybody would really want to be so generous, especially given the world that we live in. But in fact, more often than not, people do. So I'm a yes person. The majority of the people that I worked with on all these things are yes people. That's why they've always been so successful. So I think just putting yourself out there, reaching out to people, that's the place to start first. And then you start snowballing ideas off of other people, and the people that you work with make your events even better, more grand. They throw their ideas in there, and it can always be more successful than what you even imagine.
Well, that's great. Caitlin, what a great example of how to get involved and how to make a difference. And I can definitely see why you were nominated for this first class of Changemakers. So thank you for being on here. Thank you for being a part of it. Congratulations. And guys, we'll be back with more Changemakers after this. Thanks so much for watching. Caitlin, I'm glad you were here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All righty. Stay tuned. More coming up right now.
Caitlin, I loved hearing your story. I mean, I really think when I hear your story, you really are what we intended to really inspire tonight. And that's a change maker, that whether you're a business owner, a resident of your neighborhood, you can just make a change by participating in something and being that yes person. And you certainly have made a change, and you've certainly inspired myself. I hope I get the chance to meet you someday. I love one thing that you said, because I always say it too, but that is, we all have more in common than we are different. But so often we're just focused on the differences, but we really have so much more in common than we're different. And you, I hope, have inspired others that are listening tonight that want to get involved to just say yes and find something that you're passionate about and just get involved, and that together we do make the difference and we can contribute. So thank you so much for being a part of Changemakers21.
I wasn't coming through your speakers, was I?
Now you are. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, that's because I muted myself. Technical difficulties. Let me start over. The next person we're featuring is your brother, near and dear to you for your entire life. And when you do these interviews, you have a chance to sit down with someone. And when someone's really close to you, like John Cohn is, there's things that you might forget because you just know them. So as we queue up this next video, I'm going to let you lead us into it. Is there anything that you want people to know about John before we get started? And I'm going to turn it to you.
Well, I would say that his passion and commitment to what he does and serving people in his community down in Naples is amazing. And the reason I say that is I joined him, one afternoon in the intense heat that we were out passing out food. And I thought, wow, to be out there every day doing this, you must really be passionate about it. Because I told him, next time I come down, I'll write the check, but I'm not passing out the food. So I really learned about that commitment that he has. So I think you'll enjoy the next take. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Changemakers21. I have a really special guest here today, and disclaimer, my special guest is my brother. His name is John. And John, welcome to Changemakers21. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are? We have people watching all over the world, so tell us where you are and what your background is, and what do you do in the community that helps make it a better place to live?
Yeah, currently I'm in Naples, Florida. That's good for about 3 more hours because I'm about to fly back to Chicago. So I'm kind of living a double life right now. I'm part-time in Chicago, part-time in Florida, but enjoying both. And really, I've gotten involved in activities in both cities, different volunteer activities, and it's been very, very enjoyable here in Naples. Just really we started coming down here about 5-6 years ago, and I got involved a little bit, and it's progressed since then, and gotten involved with a bunch of different organizations here. Harry Chapin Food Bank is one of the biggest ones in Florida, providing food for all kinds of needy organizations, churches, homeless shelters, etc. I was kind of thrown off in the beginning too, because Harry Chapin, our younger listeners probably don't even know who he is. And our generation, he wasn't exactly a famous guy, but it was named after him. He was a singer of some renown, but he died in a plane crash. And I think around age 35, his parents started the charity in his name. It was something he was involved in. So the Harry Chapin Food Bank. I've also gotten heavily involved with St. Matthew's House, which helps out some drug addiction programs, homeless shelters, also feeding the hungry here in Naples. And then Meals for Hope is another program that does similar things. So all three of those I've got involved in. And one thing I found, I think a lot of people here in Southwest Florida, when you're living in other parts of the country, and you hear Bonita Springs and Fort Myers, and particularly Naples, including myself, everybody thinks of it as the beach community and the well-to-do area, Gulf Shore Boulevard and everything. And one thing I've discovered in Naples and all these areas is there's a vast community beyond the more well-to-do beach area. And there's a lot of middle class, a lot of low income, and they have homeless problems here, just like many, many other areas.
So can you tell us specifically, what do you do for those organizations? What type of, what would your afternoon or morning look like when you go to volunteer?
All right. So I like to be hands-on. So when I got involved with volunteer organizations, I'm not as big on, being a board member or going to meetings and stuff. I like to kind of be in the trenches and deal with the people. So Meals for Hope, we typically have trucks come out. We unload the trucks, set up tables. It used to be people would get out of their cars and would bring their grocery bags, and they would come along the table lines, and we would help serve them the various different kinds of food. When the pandemic started a couple years ago, now they've changed, and basically the cars drive by. So we'll open up, we'll greet the people. We try to be as nice as we can. A lot of them are struggling, having some tough times, but we greet the people, open the trunks, give them the food, and then pretty much move them along. So that can go for 2 or 3 hours, and anywhere from 200 cars to 500 or 600.
And how many days a week are you volunteering?
Say that again?
How many days a week are you volunteering?
Well, right now, it's become almost like a full-time. So it's my main thing here in Naples. I call it my golf, because there's a lot of people down here that play golf like 4, 5, 6 days a week. I'm a very happy non-golfer. So right now it's actually 6 days a week I'm doing various things. Harry Chapin Food Bank is similar to that, kind of a similar setup. And then at St. Matthew's House, they have multiple different charitable opportunities. The one I work is a donation table where cars from the community, when they're moving, maybe a parent has passed away, they're cleaning out their house, they will bring all kinds of donation items to the donation table. We separate, we sort, we bring it to the warehouse, and then St. Matthew's House has thrift shops where they'll sell the products that we get in at the donation table.
Sure.
They use the profits from the donation table, from the thrift shop, to help finance their homeless assistance programs.
That's great. So I want to tell you why we nominated you as a change maker.
Besides you being my brother?
Yes. First off, I was down in Florida, I think 4 or 5 months ago, and my brother John asked me to help volunteer. And I don't know, it was like 90 something degrees that day, and we were outside loading the groceries into the car. And I'm serious, after about 2-3 hours, I was done. Like, it was done. And so we are really impressed that you do this as your, that quote unquote full-time job, or better, as you say, your golf. So it's one thing to volunteer, a couple times a month, but this is your activity. You are out there daily in the trenches, not, in a boardroom, or not, figuring out behind the scenes, but you're right there loading the groceries, sorting the clothes, putting it in people's car. And that's really impressive. And that's why you were nominated. Can you share with everybody, what inspires you to do what you do? Why do you do what you do? Why do you put, so many hours behind this? What's the inspiration? Where did it come from? What's your philosophy behind it?
Well, I don't know if it was one single thing. I do it like most people when they volunteer, because it makes you feel good, and you're helping out others. I think that's kind of a common volunteering thing for me. I know when I came down to Florida from wintry Chicago, one, I wanted to do something outside. Mm-hmm. 2, I wanted to do something where I'm going to get some exercise. And 3, I wanted to do something where I'm around people. So all 3 of those fit the categories of things that I got involved in. And, probably started way back in Chicago there. You remember I was involved in Special Olympics. That's probably what first got me, the great feeling, got me involved with the great feeling you get from volunteering. And I still remember as a 22-year-old kid, my first job out of school, was in recreation department, and somebody invited me to come to a board meeting of the Special Olympics. And I didn't know much about it. And an hour and a half later, I left that board meeting and I was their official games sports coordinator. One of those deals where they threw out the fish hook and reeled me in. But ever since then, I got involved with Special Olympics. I think that was the trigger, and it makes you feel good. I enjoy it, and keeps me active, and you feel like you're doing something good.
That's great. Any specific challenges that you've had that are worth sharing with anyone in your volunteering, or any specific successes that you've had that were significant to you?
I think the biggest challenge maybe is, you want to be empathetic, but not too sympathetic. You get too caught up in some of the stories. It can bring you down, because there are some people, like in Chicago where I work at Connections, and even here, there are some in tough situations, some in homeless situations that don't necessarily want to be helped and are almost comfortable in that environment that they're in. And that kind of is frustrating to see, but those are small compared to the successes you see. And
sure,
working down here, I remember at St. Matthews, there was one guy I remember that I worked with, and he was help managing the donation table. His name was Rodney. And he told me the story how he hit rock bottom, was near suicidal, homeless, no family, was up near Rockford, Illinois. And he was literally sitting on the street contemplating, what do I do now? He had nothing, and a migrant bus heading from the south up to the north happened to pull by. And they saw him sitting there, all migrants on the bus, and the supervisor got out of the bus and said, hey, you want to join us? So here he is, white American guy, nothing. He said, you know what? He said later, it was, something from the heavens that, God brought that bus, and he jumped on the bus, went up north to Wisconsin and Michigan, and did the crops, did the migrant work, ended up going down south. Back for the season there, ended out going through a recovery program, and now he was working at St. Matthews, went through the program there, and now he's one of the supervisors.
That's
so you
great.
See a success story from someone who was rock bottom to becoming a success like that, and that's the kind of stuff that makes you feel good.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story. So finally, before we conclude, the purpose of Changemakers21 is just to let everybody know that the average person, anyone, can be a change maker in their community by just stepping up and doing something. What would you say to someone who has been inspired by this story, or someone who wants to do something in their community but maybe doesn't know where to start, or thinks that it's too much work, or they don't have the time? What advice or guidance would you have to someone who is inspired and wants to do something?
Take the first step.
Nice.
Even if it's a baby step. You can look at the big picture. Oh, what am I going to do with the time? I don't got time for this, and family, and just don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Take that first step. I still remember, besides the Special Olympics, really what got me into the whole homeless assistance thing was a little ad, very little ad I saw in a local paper in Chicago. Front desk help needed for Connections for the homeless in Evanston. Just a little ad, and just, like many other people out there, I was probably, thinking about it. It might be something to do. Well, I took the step, called the lady. Week later, I'm over there, and I became the front desk supervisor over there, and got to know a lot of the people, and that kind of what triggered it. So I would say that's what it is. Just the baby step, the first step, get into it. Don't get overwhelmed by thinking it's going to be too much.
Right. That's great. I love that advice. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time, and welcome to the Changemakers inaugural class of 2021. So safe travels back to Chicago, John. Thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate your asking me to be on.
So that was great. Larry, I'm going to bring you on right away, actually, here. And, you know, it's interesting because I've known your brother. I know his children, and obviously I know your family and have known for almost a decade now. And John is so much more than what you were able to see in this interview. I mean, he's done some incredible things. So to see him spend so much of his time engaged in helping others just goes to show that, like, it doesn't matter how much time you have, how much money you have, what your resources are, you can make a big difference in the lives of others. And the story about the man that was on the verge of suicide, I mean, those are the kind of things that you can't script, you can't plan for, you can't prepare. But knowing that you're involved in something where you're making an impact is huge. And I know you feel the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just, again, I really admire, you know, that he puts 5-6 days a week into volunteering and making the communities in which he lives a better place. That's what it's all about. That's what Changemakers21 is about.
I do want to throw a complaint at you real quick about your interview, if I could. So I noticed that in your interview, Larry Cohn with John Cohn, your name said Jim Shelby. And I got 3 comments that said that Jim got much better looking in this interview than he was in the other interviews. It's not funny. I mean, it's really not funny. But no, all kidding aside, this is the grassroots campaign, the grassroots effort that you were talking about. And so, Larry, we're a little over the halfway point, and I'm just curious what your take is so far on the change makers that we've had a chance to interview and that we've seen.
So my take is just, again, you know, gratitude, appreciation, and inspiration. Just hearing the stories of what these men and women are doing for their communities. I have so much appreciation for what they give of themselves and what they give of their spirit, and taking the situations in which they came from and maybe the difficult childhoods or the difficult situations, and not wanting another child or another individual to go through that, and just, you know, making the world a better place. And like I think I mentioned earlier, the mission of Revitalize is to create communities in unity and creating this teamwork. And it's my hope that through this inaugural class of 2021 of these change makers, we're going to continue to provide more resources for all these change makers out there, different ways that we can connect, and different ways that we can inspire you who's watching this to become involved in whatever serves you, whatever amount of time, whether it's 1 day a week or 1 day a month, and whatever you like, that together we can create a difference. So that's been my big takeaway from tonight so far. What about you, Jay?
Yeah. Well, it's been really great, and seeing the comments, and I want to put something into perspective, and it's I'm going to flip back to what Larry Kindbaum said as we were kind of getting this whole thing kicking off today, and, you know, comments from Caitlin and John, and you never really know the situation that someone else is in, whether it's, you know, thoughts of dismay or gloom and doom or whatever it may be. There are a lot of times where you can do something or say something that the impact is so much larger than it should be because the person you're talking to needed it so much at that time. And, you know, as we go in, a couple of our philosophies, Larry, that we talk about all the time. I mean, there's 3 key ones. It's mastering the spin, the art of the pivot, and the shifted reality. And the reason why those are important is because it teaches you, and this isn't about us, right? But it teaches you to focus on the things that are going to improve the situation that you're in, improve your outcome, and build you up. And that's really what Changemakers was about. So I will tell you, just since this started, I've been connected with so many people on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and messages to the website, whether it's a revitalizedworld.org or the jimandlarryteam.com, or even thenextcore.com. I've gotten several messages on there about how can I be involved? Did you think about this person as a change maker? So let me just let the cat out of the bag. This isn't the only change makers event that we're going to do. There's 2 more events. Remember, tomorrow night from 6 to 9-ish, you can never script go live. And then Thursday night from 6 to 9-ish, we'll be live again. And then that will allow us to highlight the first 33 of 45 change makers that we're going to highlight for 2021. And over the course of the coming weeks, we'll break out those details here as we wrap up for the evening. When we're done with the next few interviews, we'll break out the details of how those additional change makers will be shared with each of you and how we can support them on a more global scale and exactly what's in store for the change makers. So Larry, if you don't mind, our next interview is Rich Todd, and I'm going to cue it up if that's okay.
Perfect. Let's get to Rich Todd.
Perfect. So Rich is someone that I've known for, gosh, I'm trying to think, from 2004. So whatever the math is on that, 17 years. And I met him because he came into a retail environment, my last job, my last job W-2 that I had. And he came in and he did something really amazing. And the story of this has stuck with me, and I tell it all the time, at least once a month. And over the course of 17 years, that's a lot of times to tell the story. And I was really honored to get a chance to bring him in and have him be a change maker for this event, because he really is. The other part of what a change maker is for us is the unsung hero. The people that are doing things every day that you're never going to hear about unless Jim and Larry and Revitalize tell the story. And that's what we wanted to do. And again, it's been such a humbling experience because there's people out there doing much greater things than we are. I think it was Charles Schwab. He said, "Here lies a man that surrounds himself with better men than he." And I feel surrounded by incredible people throughout this Changemaker event. And we're going to hear from one of them, Mr. Rich Todd, right now. All right, guys, we are back with more change makers. I'm here with someone that when I was asked to host this event, I thought about what it meant to be a change maker. And I thought about the big things, from the people that go out and make millions of dollars for their charity to the people that go into the neighborhoods and make a difference on their corners and in the houses and with the people around them. And I really thought about a gentleman by the name of Rich Todd. And I met Rich. I'll give you a little background. Rich is on the screen. Hello, Rich, by the way. How are you?
How you doing, Jim? I'm
doing great, man. Doing great. I met Rich almost 18 years ago, and I was working with a retail company, and he came in and he said, "I need to buy an air conditioner." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'm looking for a window unit." And I find one. He goes, "How big will this cooler?" I can't remember the questions, but real simple questions. And then he said, "Okay, how many do you have?" And I jokingly said, "How many do you want?" And he responded with, "Well, how many do you have?" And I said, "We have a lot." And he goes, "Well, I need a lot." And it turns out that he was buying air conditioners for elderly people that didn't have air conditioners and were in danger. And he told me a story at the time behind it, which honestly, I don't remember the story of why he was doing it, but I remember the gesture. And he came back year after year and did that. And now he's doing a ton of stuff that we'll get into in just a little bit. But Rich, I just wanted to say, man, that is a definition of change maker for me, somebody that makes a difference in the lives of others for no reason other than to make the difference. And I'm so glad you were able to be here and we were able to connect. And you want to share with everybody who you are? They know your name, but what you do and how you got involved with this type of work?
Yeah. Well, again, my name's Rich Todd. I grew up poor, and I've been a union painter for 30 years now, and I travel a lot. So when I say I grew up poor, I mean I grew up poor, and every year, for a long time, I get my kids, and I actually buy turkeys and stuff in the wintertime, and I pass those out to people that are in need, because I just want my kids to understand what it's like to give to people who don't have. So I've done that, and like I said, with air conditioners, I've helped out people there, and then I go on this next door app we have, you know, and there's usually people on there looking for stuff that needs done. It could be minor, like hanging a porch swing, to installing a new downspout, or anything I could help with their house, or moving something. Elderly couple needing help moving something. You know, I just respond, because most people, for some reason, don't want to respond and do anything, go out of their way. They're too busy. Well, I just make time for it, because again, if I needed help or my wife needed help, I wish somebody would be there to help them out. But I don't know. I've just been like that for a long time, and I don't know, my heart's bigger than my sense, I guess. I don't know.
That's it. You know what I found in these interviews that I'm doing and have done is, you know, it's everybody's so humble, but I mean, I think the impact that you make, Rich, is pretty huge. And when you say things like that, it reminds me of the impact that you're having on your own children, and how that will continue to, I guess, breed a different lesson generationally. A lot of times you'll see that kids that grow up with things forget that there's others that grow up without things, and you seem committed to making sure that message doesn't get lost, I guess. So can you give me an example of one of the stories of somebody you helped out with? I know you explained some specific things, but why were you doing the air conditioners? There was something there, or some fear that you had, or something you heard. I don't remember the story, but how'd you get started with the air conditioners?
Well, I guess looking back, I mean, my memory is not great, but I mean, I've known there was older people. I've heard of people dying, you know, because, or nobody's checking on the elderly. So I started doing it myself and reaching out to people, and that's how I started doing it. I just started looking into it. I mean, it intrigued me to know that, dang, that not everybody's got somebody. You know, usually you'd think, well, everybody's got somebody, but they don't. You know, people die off for some reason, or so there's a lot of lonely people out there. And like I said, I just look in the wintertime. Here's a prime example. Just winter times, like I'll go around to my elderly neighbors and I'll plow their driveways for them, you know, because I just know they're elderly. They don't need to be out there on the ice, you know, so I do that. So like I said, it's just little things that make me want to go do things, and I just go do it, because ultimately all it's costing me is my time.
That's amazing. So, Rich, a lot of people might think, well, I'll wait to get started. I'll wait to do something. I'll wait to help out. What would you say to those that hear your story and they're inspired to go do something? What words of advice or encouragement or suggestions do you have for those people that are trying to follow in your footsteps here?
I would just say, like, for me, myself, I always try to live with integrity, you know, I mean, and I always, you know, the thing about integrity is doing the right thing. No one else is looking. You know, I don't need nobody to brag on me. I don't need, you know, we talked about whatever. I don't tell nobody about it. Everything I do, I just do because it's the right thing to do, you know, and that's what I do. And I think if people do that, people help them out, it would make them feel a lot better with themselves and everything they do.
Yeah. Well, Rich, this whole event for me was about telling the stories that needed to be told. And with so much craziness going on in the world, I'm honored to know you, man. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. And I know you've impacted a lot of people. Thank you for being on here with us today.
I appreciate it, Jim. Good talking to you again.
Good talking with you. All right, guys, we're going to be back with more Changemakers here in the next couple minutes. Stay tuned for more.
All I can say is the world would be a better place if there were more Rich Todds. I mean, what an inspiration. He's really the definition of the unsung hero. And also, you know, what struck me so much too is he came from a background that he didn't let his background limit him. In other words, he leveraged the experiences that he had in his background to help others, like so many of our other change makers that we've heard tonight. And he really has taken the lack and the deprivation that he felt as a child, and he just wants to make sure that others feel a little bit more safe, or a little bit more loved, or a little bit more fed. So Rich, you have done an amazing job in your community, and you've really demonstrated, and you've really shown that It doesn't take a lot to be a change maker, but it just takes someone to care, just to care about that, you know. And you again, like, inspired me like others have tonight, but you really inspired me it starts right in your neighborhood. You know, it doesn't have to be this big worldwide thing or this big changing thing. Just 3 doors down to the right and 3 doors down to the left and maybe across the street. So thank you, Rich Todd.
Yeah, it's like Caitlin said in her interview a little bit earlier, you know, you can make an impact on your street, on your block, with the people that you will see every day. You don't have to go out and change the world. If everybody changed a little bit, then the world would change. And so I want to share again, I know I've said it, but when Rich came in, I was working for a company that's no longer here, but Rich came in, and here's the story. He said, how big of an air conditioner would I need to cool like a South City house? And I said, well, how big is the house? And he said, I don't know, average South City house. And he threw out a number, and I'm like, well, probably this one. And he goes, well, how many do you have in stock? And I jokingly said, how many do you need? He goes, all that you have in stock. And I kind of looked at him, and I said, let me check. And I checked, and he bought everything we had in stock. And he loaded it up in his pickup truck, and he left that day. And he came back in a couple weeks later, and he bought more. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said he heard a story on the news where an elderly person had died from heat stroke. And he said, I can't remember the exact words. It's been a long time, but something like not on my watch. Or what if that was my grandma or grandpa, or I don't know if you use the term grandma or grandpa, but like, or my parents, you know, what if? And I think a lot of people, you know, they look at what's right in front of their face, and they don't look at the little opportunities that exist everywhere to make an impact. So it was really fun sitting down with Rich. And
I love that story. I mean, I loved his story, and just the fact he is so humble. He just doesn't.
You would never know.
Never, right. Pure love.
He's not humble with me. He's a little bit of a smart aleck, and we banter back and forth, but no, I'm kidding. You know, Larry, our next interview is with a man that, you know, I hate to say it like this, but we've known him for 10 years, roughly. And we've kind of watched him evolve and grow up and change in his career. He's a prolific speaker, just an incredible guy out of Annapolis, Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
And what he does is not really relevant to the story of how he's a change maker. He has a business, but what he wanted to do is in every area that he took his business and he grew his business, he wanted to have an impact on that community. And he came up with a way to do that. And I'll let you cue up who he is and all that good stuff, Larry, and then we'll get started.
So the man is Nathan Bourne, a dynamic speaker. I've learned so much from Nate Bourne myself. So let's hear your story, Nate.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Changemakers. Jim Shelby here again. I'm joined by Nathan Bourne, founder and CEO of MyCore Inc. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Nathan and I have a lot of history. I've known him for going on 10 years now.
Man.
And about how many years ago did you launch the MyCore brand?
January of 2016. So
Wow.
5 years. Yeah.
5.5 years now.
The MyCore Inc., that actual entity, will be 3 years old October 2nd. So that kind of evolved into a new model, a new entity, but I've been on the path for 5+ years.
That's fantastic. The reason why I immediately, when we put together this series, I knew that I wanted you to be a part of it, Nathan, is because you are a change maker by how we define it. You're an example of one person, one man, making a difference in not only your community, but every community that MyCore touches. But before we go into that, can you share a little bit with our audience here, who you are, your background, even from your, I'll throw the words in here, extremely humble beginnings, just a 90-second snapshot of who you are?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, kind of had a unique upbringing. I am the fourth of 9 children, so that's kind of a unique thing in this day and age. I grew up to parents that got married at 18 and 19, and they did not succeed financially, you could say. So we just struggled growing up financially, and that was kind of tough. But I chose athletics and academics as my vehicle, kind of my way out, if you will. And I excelled in that, did well in the sport of wrestling, and ended up at an Ivy League school, the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, and wrestling there, Division I. And I felt that it was very linear and that I wasn't going to make an impact. I wasn't going to make a big change. Not to say that I couldn't have, but just at that time at 20 years old. So I just got inspired by entrepreneurship, and I wanted to change the world. You know, I wanted to make an impact in my world. And for me, for my story to kind of make sense, I needed to do something that felt significant. And that just sort of led me onto a path of being an entrepreneur, being a person that's driven by philanthropy. And I wanted to kind of swing for the fences. So that's kind of the short version of it.
Yeah, and you did. So I've known Nathan as he reached, top levels with a company that we both worked at together. And then at the peak of your success and the growth of your career, you walked away and you started MyCore. And the thing that I thought was really interesting about your mission was that you choose to give a percentage of what you earn as an organization locally to the community, to nonprofits, to organizations in that area. Can you share a little bit about how that works and what you do?
Yeah, that was from day one. I wanted to hardwire into the foundation of MyCore, what we call MyCore legacy. And it was just that I wanted to create a legacy with MyCore. I think this word legacy, it deserves a little bit of unpacking because we hear about it a lot. We definitely think about it when we think about death and, our children and our children's children. But, we have the day we were born, and we have the day that we die, and we have that dash in the middle. And we've heard that before. A lot of thought leaders kind of speak to that dash. I think legacy, people often think, starts at the day of your death, what you leave behind, what legacy you leave. And I don't quite see it that way. I think you live your legacy, that really your legacy begins from your date of birth through your dash to your date of death and beyond, that it's really part of all of that. And obviously business and community, and that's kind of the space that I'm referring to, but that's true in the intangibles. If you're an angry person, you are living and therefore leaving an angry legacy to the people around you and to the people that possibly are even your children. And then the people around you have to reconcile with that. They have to kind of deal with that and say, am I going to carry this on, or am I going to purify this? Am I going to refine this? Am I going to grow through this and not just go through this? So that's kind of the more human experience slant on it. However, more tangibly, what I wanted to build was that as we crafted MyCore and we learned and we grew and we developed and we, just expanded and scaled, that we were making a difference real time. Because I think what happens is that people set out to build something. They sometimes succeed or succeed even big. And then they think, okay, how can I now make an impact? How can I now offload this because I'm freed up? I've built it. I have the clout. I have the mindset and the skill set, and I've built the asset. And I think that's well and good, but this is kind of how I visualize it, whether this makes sense or not. If the United States went through a drought and the country was, totally dry, and there was fear of forest fires and there wasn't enough water, you could make the argument, well, we have water on both sides of us. We have the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. What's the problem? Well, the problem is, how would you get it to the middle of the country? I mean, you're in St. Louis. I'm by the coast. You're going to get jugs of water. You need an irrigation system, right? You need a water cycle. You need the ecosystem that in the natural world we experience, which gives us fresh water and gives us, soil to grow on. Well, if you take that same sort of thought process and you apply it to what's above ground, I think it holds weight. It holds water, which is that real time you should be making these differences. You should be connecting with nonprofits, connecting with your community. That way you scale and grow together. So because we're in essence a startup, we like to work with nonprofits that are startups. Nothing wrong with giving money to the United Way or the Salvation Army or some of these largely established nonprofits and charities, but we wanted to identify people that were in a similar place that we were in and say, how can we lock arms with you and lean on one another? And I think money's a very tangible part of that, obviously, but there's also time and energy, right? System, SYSTEM, save yourself time, energy, money. So when thinking about giving and what that really means, and to create that reciprocity, we have to factor in time and energy in addition to money. So we make sure we dedicate our time. We have people that create awareness for the organizations that we're working with. And we don't just look at it as in, here's a check, here's a piece of our revenue, here's a part of our profits, but rather how do we really shield up that organization and apply our time, our energy, and our money. So hopefully that all made sense.
No, it does. Answer this question for me, though, if you could, because I want to be conscious of time. Just in like 30 seconds, why was that important to you?
I was on the receiving end of a lot of it. Christmas happened often, and I knew as a child that my parents didn't buy all those gifts, that they came through the church or they came through an organization that, made that happen. The church specifically was a big part of my upbringing. It built faith in me and it built core values in me. It also took care of some of my physiological needs as far as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I've been on the receiving end of it, and I feel a duty to not just facilitate it, but to almost innovate it and revolutionize it, because there's some incredibly talented people that happen to be born into families that fall under a certain socioeconomic level. And with given the right resources, they're going to be our next doctors, our next presidents, our next leaders. And it shouldn't be so rare. The rags to riches story shouldn't be so rare. It should be something that is more commonplace. So there's a lot more to what I just said there. And obviously, don't have time to go into that, but it's just, it's like a duty. I have to do it. If I became a billionaire and I look back over my life and all I have is things and accolades and status, it was all a waste. That's not the legacy I want personally.
I love that. What challenges have you encountered along your journey of trying to do this and try and give time and give money and give resources? And what advice would you have for those that maybe are scared to take those first steps? What would you say to them and how to get started?
Yeah, there's a tangible and an intangible. There's a practical and an impractical. So you have to sort of address both of those, because there's going to be a component in it that is just faith, but there's also acumen and stewardship and planning. People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So I came out of the gate with a lot of mojo around it and was hardcore about it. And then I had to be wise and put a plan together and really map it out conservatively. So to answer the question, I live by a philosophy that Ralph Waldo Emerson said, you've perhaps heard it, that Do the thing and you'll have the power. Most people, they want the power in order to do the thing, but it doesn't work that way. It would be so nice if it did. Wouldn't it be nice if you had all the resources and then you started to give, or you had all the resources and then you started your business, you had the time, you had the energy, you had the money. It doesn't work that way. You do it and then those things follow. So there is a component of it is that's just do it, like Nike would put it, just do it. Find a way. And pick a percentage, 1% of your revenue. I'm telling you, you can give that away. You're wasting that on stuff that is not going to bring any reward to you, tangibly or intangibly. And then scale it up from there. But also, if money's not your gift, find another way to give. Your time, your energy, your introduction, your awareness. Bring your service to people. And nonprofit, profit. I don't get too lost in the sauce there, because the way I see a nonprofit, a 501c3, is a mission-driven, tax-advantaged business. My core is a mission-driven, tax-advantaged business. We're not a 501c3, but we operate the same way in that both organizations, both entities are on similar paths. So just find a way to give. It doesn't always have to be, and where's my tax benefit, receipt for it? Just give, just do it, and then find more formal ways to hardwire it into your model, and things will open up.
Awesome. Nathan, what's your website so people can come find you?
Totally. It's www. That stands for the World Wide Web. I'm joking. It's leadwithmycore.com. Leadwithmycore.com.
Awesome. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us here today. We'll be back with more Changemakers right after this. Thanks for watching.
Right on.
Yeah, Nathan, every time I hear you speak, I always learn something from you. So from me to you, thank you. I love the reference to the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, do the thing and you'll have the power. But, more importantly, again, you're just another example of someone who came from a background or a beginning that didn't have all the advantages that many people have, but then you not only rose above it, but you come back to help people in those situations. And I believe wholeheartedly in what you said, that the future doctors, presidents, leaders, just whatever are come and are in these disadvantaged situations. And the only thing that's missing, the only missing component is the resources. And so as a community, we want to give back, but it's really inspiring to hear about a business, a for-profit business that gives back. And I also just loved how you created the connections between the emerging nonprofits and your emerging business. So again, thank you for being part of the show tonight, and congratulations on being a Changemaker for 21.
Yeah, for me, it was really amazing to watch Nathan, again, just do what he does. He's a brilliant speaker. And, he's, for as young as he is, he's a philosopher. And I also, we've brought Nathan to various points all around the country, whether it was when we were working with another company together and we utilized his talents to share what it means to take ownership of the situation that you're in and truly take advantage of whatever it is. He is an example of mastering the spin and the art of the pivot, if ever I saw it. So Nathan, congrats on your success. Again, I love just having a connection and an affiliation with you. You're an amazing man. So thank you.
Thanks.
We've gotten a lot of requests. I've got some private messages, direct messages. How do you connect with Jim and Larry? So you can reach us on all social media channels at Jim and Larry Team, and that's at Jim and Larry Team, so the @ sign. You can follow Revitalize on social media at Let's Revitalize. So that's LETSREVITALIZE, and Nextcore is at thenextcore.com, and that's NEXCORE. We've also started having some things funnel in for Revitalize in the way of donations. We appreciate that. It allows us to tell the story and share the good that's already happening. If you feel inspired by the individuals that you've seen now. Imagine if we were to actually create a completely inspired world, or let's just start with the country, a completely inspired country. Or let's not even go that far. Let's look at the state or the city that you live in, or what about your block? If everybody took ownership of their block and felt inspired and felt compelled to revitalize, what an amazing world we would be living in right now. So your donations go to help us continue to tell the story. You can name one of the change makers, and we will have a match. The Jim and Larry team is matching the revitalized donations, and we will act in support of and support to those change makers so they can continue their mission of making an impact and communities in unity. So Larry, I'm going to queue up our next one. This is a great story. You actually heard part of this interview, or maybe even all the interview. It's with Rich Brooks. So Rich and he's a local guy to us here in St. Louis. And by the way, we're coming to you live from downtown St. Louis. I got a beautiful view of Union Station.
Enterprise Center.
Enterprise Center. It'd be more incredible if the Blues had been playing in the playoffs, but they weren't. But that's a whole other story. So I will just say Rich did what he could do with what he had. And Larry, I'll let you cue it up if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about Rich Brooks.
Sure. I mean, Rich has a passion for art. And when COVID came and his gallery was shut down, like so many other businesses was shut down, he didn't let that stop him. He still continued to share his passion for art with the community. And here's his story.
Okay, we are live with Changemakers21. Rich, how many times do you think we tried to get this interview put together? About 640, I think.
I think at least 12.
Well, you know what? All good things come to those who wait, and the best things are worth waiting for. And I think that's how I feel about you, Rich. I'm really excited to have you on here. You were nominated by an Emmy Award-winning TV producer that we both know, and she shared with me a story of what you were doing during the pandemic to make an impact on your community and in your neighborhood. So what I want to do is I want to just flip this back to you and have you share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you were doing that had such an impact on her and so many others.
Well, I'm in St. Louis, and I'm in Soulard, St. Louis. The oldest part of St. Louis, so I love that part. I run Soulard Art Gallery, and when COVID hit, we had to close the gallery. And when we closed the gallery on March 23rd, 2020, I decided we still needed to let the public know that art is important to them and to us. So I went home and thought, what can I do? I grabbed a canvas and I screwed it to the front of my house. I started painting the next morning, and that was almost 500 days ago. The first 100 days, I painted on a canvas over and over each day with positive messages. Things like a picture of the witch in Oz where she was under the building and it said, I should have stayed home. Or a picture of Dorothy laying in a bed of poppies and it says, there's no place like home. So to me, those messages were important to the people driving by, important to teachers that started paying attention to my things and sharing it with their classes. When that happened, I started drawing a black and white picture each day of the painting and putting it online so they could print them off and they could make their own paintings themselves. And part of the reason I did it was courage. I've never been afraid about getting out there with my art. Part of it was to comfort other people, awareness that, yes, we're in the middle of COVID, but we're not dead. We're survivors. Part of it was just being social, proud of where I live and what I do. And then there's that part about curiosity. People were curious about what I was going to do next. They'd send me suggestions. They'd laugh. It just was I don't know. I was excited to say thank you to first line workers, to my mail person. I did her on one of the paintings one day. I mean, I tried to thank nurses, doctors, anybody that was important to saving lives.
That's great, Rich. And you know, when we put together this Changemakers lineup, there's so many different people and different types of individuals that are on here from different countries and different continents, all doing their part to make a difference in their community. And when I heard your story, like it really made me feel good. And I think that's what a change maker does on top of everything is they spread positive emotional feelings to their community. They make a difference in whatever way is special and close and dear to them. And you know, I was talking with someone about what you do, and the question was, can you imagine how many tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people drove by and saw those pictures over the course of this time, saw those paintings, and what an impact it had on their lives? Do you have any specific stories or specific things where somebody stopped you and said, "Oh my gosh, you're Rich Brooks. You're the guy that does the paintings"?
That happens often, but for the first 100 days, a young man who was 4 came by every day with his dad, every day. And finally, on the 100th day, when I was finishing that process of that one canvas, which probably weighs about 40 pounds, he brought me a bottle of wine and a thank you note. And he just has loved it and continues to come by. Yesterday, a man stopped me and said, "You know, you make my day every day. I have to go to work. I'm not happy about it, but I see your work and it raises me up. On the way home, it raises me up again." And that made me feel good as an artist.
Gotcha.
And something I didn't say was I've been an artist for 68 years. I don't know why I wasted the first 4, because I'm 72 and I paint every day.
That's great. Rich, how do they find you online on social media to see some of your work?
I'm only on Facebook and sometimes Instagram, but they can just look up Rich Brooks on Facebook, and there's a little old ugly guy.
And we'll have the when these videos are subsequently released after the Changemakers event is done live here, we'll post the link on YouTube to find you on Facebook. So, Rich, thank you so much for brightening my day today and for all the people that pass by your home. For those that might be watching and feel inspired by your story, because a lot of the people invested, you know, significant amounts of money, lots of time, and some people just don't have those resources to do those things. But you did something with what you had and you made a huge impact. So what would you share with those that might feel inspired by your story to do something that is within their capacity to do? What are your words of wisdom for them?
I would say if you are thinking about doing something, just do it. It doesn't have to cost a lot. Like I've gone through during this process, probably 200 brushes, probably 40 canvases. I didn't have to. I could keep painting on that one canvas, but people stepped up and went, "Oh my gosh, we don't want you to waste them anymore. We want you to save them." So they gave me some canvases, and then I bought some canvases. I think if you want to do something, you just have to figure out how you get it done.
Awesome. That is, Rich, I can't tell you, I think that was the perfect message to end this segment with. And thank you so much. Congratulations on being one of our 45 change makers highlighted for 2021 for Revitalize, and for Jim and for myself and for Larry. We appreciate what you've done, and we're excited for people to hear more about your story.
And you'll send me a link so that I know too what we're doing.
Yes, you'll have copies of everything. So, Rich, thank you so much. I'm going to send it back to my co-host, Larry Cohn, to keep us going with Changemakers21. Congrats again, Rich.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Rich was I think it took I don't know how many tries to get him online for this interview, and so he's as equally as technically challenged as me. So yay, Rich!
It was like
was.
pulling teeth. I think we tried about 40 times. I mean,
We
not
did.
really 40, but close. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So I have that same technological challenge. But here, so at Jim and Larry, at the Jim and Larry team, there's many things that we teach. And one of my favorite things to teach people is that so often when there's a condition, people try and change the condition. And conditions can't often be changed, and they're very difficult to change. But what you can change is the way you view the condition. And if you can change your perspective on the condition then has to change because it's no longer in that incarnation because you've changed how you view the condition. So Rich had a gallery and he obviously is passionate about art. He's been doing it his whole life and COVID shut it down. He could not change that condition, but instead of changing it, he changed the way he viewed it. And from his changing and shifting of the thought process. In other words, he wasn't angry about it. He wasn't, protesting about it. It wasn't that. He just changed the way he viewed about it. Then he came up with this great idea that was inspired and birthed within him to start displaying his art in front of his home. And as a result of that, the condition, meaning the fact that the gallery closed, was no longer a big deal because people were still viewing his art. So he is a master at that you can't always change the condition, but when you change how you view it, the condition then changes. So thanks, Rich.
Yeah, and again, Larry, I love when you share some of those tidbits or words of wisdom because there's so many people that get stuck where they are, and seeing somebody like Rich makes you remind yourself that you can unstuck yourself. There's a book with a very similar title that is recommended reading. Yes. So I'll share that with you. We have 2 interviews left for Changemakers21 this first night, where we highlight the first 11 changemakers for Revitalize. And this next one, I just want to thank her as we kind of lead into this, Larry. And if you don't mind, I'll take it and kind of cue it up here.
Sure.
So I was introduced to a lady by the name of Angela Bartolome, and she was an immigrant. Her family was immigrants, and they have really done some amazing things with a foundation that her mom started along with some other people and in the line of work that she chose to do. She is a true example of a change maker. She's part of our Revitalized Los Angeles Changemaker chapter. And we're going to share her story right now. Angela Bartolome. All right, we are back with more change makers. And I want to make sure I get your name right. It's Angela Bartolome?
Bartolome? Yes.
Bartolome. I practiced it in my head a couple of times. We received a nomination for Angela as a change maker, and she's got kind of a double-sided approach to what she does. She's definitely a community leader. Her family helped form an organization that is just at the forefront, I'll say, of awareness regarding women of color and what is going on in the world and the sex trade. And then your degree is in helping other people. So all around, you're involved in assisting people. I think you're a clinical social worker by trade. Is that correct?
Yes.
And okay.
My doctorate is in organizational change and leadership for nonprofits.
Awesome. So I want you to just take a quick second and share a little bit about you, your background, where you're from, where you live currently, and what you're involved in.
Yeah, thank you. This was a really interesting surprise, so I really appreciate the time. So I currently live in Los Angeles, California. I was here for most of my life since we immigrated from the Philippines. My parents were community organizers, and during the era of martial law, and in that time of the Philippines where it was pretty dangerous to speak out and advocate for justice and safety of the community. So at some point, many people ended up being pushed out of their homelands, including my family, into other countries, which we identify here in is LA for me. So we've been community well, I was raised by community organizers and continue that practice of community organizing from my paid work as well as my volunteer-based work. I've been a community organizer with a firm for about 15 years, originally Gabriella Network, and organizers, the founding organizers include Ninochka Roska and my mom, Agnes Bartolome, and a few other women across the US, recognizing that change had to be done domestically and abroad. And then younger generations of organizers from myself, and now like significantly younger than me, have continued that movement for justice for women and children, and women of color. And yeah, that's my background.
No, that's great. And could you tell me why you're so passionate about this? I mean, obviously, a lot of people that hear this feel compelled to say something or do something, but you're taking it to a different level, you and your family. So why is this such an important project for you?
Um, it's for us, it's not even for me, it's not even a project, it's a lifestyle. It's what maintained that self-care and not feeling helpless and stuck when hard times have happened to my family, the communities that I serve. I grew up when we moved to LA, I grew up in South LA and saw a lot of hardships. And a band-aid of a service was never just enough because again, it's so restricted by what we can offer based on this pot of funding or this who said what we can do, versus as a community organizer with boots on the ground as my volunteer work and as my lifestyle, you can always move that forward no matter what. You can always connect that message no matter who's behind you or where you see moving forward, and you can feel the drive of just, yes, this has to keep happening. Yes, people do deserve to feel safe, to be fed, to be connected, to be loved. And I think a lot of times in the hardships of why people have to immigrate or even survive in their local communities is because our basic needs aren't met. And I'm as a collectivist kind of person, I think that we can all do that together.
That's really great. Do you have any particular story? Like you started to share one when we were preparing for the interview about someone as young as 4. Is that correct? Do you have any specific stories of where you guys got involved or where you could have gotten involved?
Yes. So we've done a lot of a firm has done a lot of work domestically and abroad because we recognize a lot of our experiences locally are not the same, but like parallel a lot of foreign interactions. For example, like when a typhoon in Philippines happened, one of the first victims of trafficking was a 4-year-old child, because not because the family wanted to, but they couldn't navigate how to get food, housing, and resources after a typhoon destroyed their community. And it was one of those things that the local folks knew that people came in to save or be like a helper to their community, but only for an exchange. And survival and justice and safety shouldn't be an exchange.
That's very well stated. It's amazing the work that you're doing. I can see why you were nominated. You know, a lot of people will hear your story and may feel compelled to get involved and do something. So I'd like you to do 2 things for me if you could. Number 1, share how people would get a hold of your organization. And then secondly, those that feel inspired to do something, maybe don't feel like they have the resources or aren't connected to anyone, how do they get involved chasing their passion?
Yeah, I think it's also just being genuine to each other and asking questions. And I really appreciate this platform because I know this was a really last minute and like spur of the moment kind of conversation that we had. But I appreciate the openness to hear what we all can do to be a piece of that puzzle. So if you need to reach out for a firm, it's AF3IRM. We're on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, all these other things. I'm not the best at social media, so some other folks handle that with me. So we're an organization where we have chapters across the U.S. And including Hawaii and Puerto Rico and New York and Bay Area and other areas, including some in, I think we're emerging some in Georgia and Seattle, because I think people want to feel that connectedness to recognizing we have the option to create this change. And it might be as a financial, like as a donor, donating $5, which is most of our donors are, small donors, because we're all a volunteer-based organization. And some folks also just share our likes, and it can be that simple as a conversation with, how can I get involved? What is it that you need? Or even just educating ourselves on what's really happening. I think it can get really easy for us to stick to just what we're personally experiencing, and it takes effort for some folks to be able to empathize and put themselves in the shoes of others outside of their like personal lived experience. So there's that. And my paid work is I'm a clinical director with Asian American Drug Abuse Program here in LA, and where we provide services in across 12 different languages, which is really rare to have so many access to languages. But we do believe in that community-based, family-based approach in treatment and care, because so many places where you reach out for substance use or mental health care will stick to this medical approach and don't feel like it's very genuine. And so that's something that as a clinical social worker, and I do supervise and train and educate on this practice, is if you can provide that genuine community, family-based connection, they're more likely to stay and survive. Sadly, the community of LA has been hit hardest with poverty, homelessness, joblessness, and also addiction for so many decades, if not longer, that however we can be part of that community together, I think we're more likely to thrive through that.
That's amazing. Angela, thank you for the work that you do. It's easy to see why you were nominated as a change maker. And I'm sure that most of the people that benefit from what you do have no idea that you were the one doing it. And your humility is very apparent, and your job is well done. Thank you so much for being a part of Changemakers.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. We're going to be back with more after this. Larry Cohen, I'm going to send it back to you.
Angela, I mean, what a story and what work you do. That story about, the hurricane and the 4-year-old, like that's really some intense stuff, and how your past has inspired you to do what you do in your future, and you're carrying on the mission that your parents set forth as community organizer. And I just really admire you, and also, like Jim said, congratulate you as being one of the 2021 change makers. So Jim, who do we have coming up next?
Yeah, I'm going to bring myself on the frame.
Okay.
We've got a really, really powerful interview with a young lady by the name of Nicole Jenkins. And Nicole is a Revitalize alumni. She has actually served on our board in the past and really instrumental in taking action in areas where there are things that need to be done that aren't being done. And she kind of takes up arms to make sure those things occur. But to be honest, I was unprepared for the depth that her interview would take, and the stories that she shared. And, listening to her, I got very emotional, and I could tell she got emotional just recounting the experiences of her life. And Larry, Nicole as well. I'm going to let you cue up this video, and we'll get it going here. But she's amazing. Larry, back to you.
Yeah, so Nicole has done so many positive things for the community here in St. Louis. I was really inspired by several of her stories, and have been honored to know her and be a small part of the journey that she's been on. So Nicole, we will send it back to you and Jim, and let's hear some of those stories.
Start.
All right, we are back, and we are live with Nicole Jenkins. Hello, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Wonderful. Well, we've got 45 change makers from around the world that we're highlighting, and you are part of the inaugural class. So congratulations for being nominated and for receiving the honor. And secondly, just a lot of the audience is going to have no idea who you are. So can you share a little bit about your background, where you're from, and go from there.
I am Nicole Jenkins. I am from the city of St. Louis, West St. Louis City. Actually considered to be one of the roughest parts of St. Louis City. I was a DSTEC student all throughout my elementary, middle school, and high school years. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to attend Rockwood School District. So I was a bus student, for those that don't know what the DSEC program is. I then went off to St. Louis Community College. I didn't want to incur any financial debt. I served as president of Phi Theta Kappa, actually vice president of Phi Theta Kappa, and president of communications for the National Honor Society. I then went off to University College, graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Communications. And I have my adult years, my childhood years, I've always been taught to thrive on community service and helping others that can do nothing for you, but treat people equally and fair. And so as a child, that carried over, and those childhood memories carried over into my adult years. And so I started working in healthcare. I also worked at New City School while in college. And I love to dance. I love to run. I love yoga. And I love outreach, whatever that may be, whether it's mentoring, whether it's volunteering at local food banks. I just love to give. So that's who I am.
And what's your sign?
I am kidding. A Capricorn. But they say it's two Capricorns. You have one that's bad, and you have one that's kind of lazy, and you have one that's just a go-getter, and I think I'm the go-getter Capricorn.
Fair enough. Well, and there's a little bit more to your background. So let me also share. You served on the board for Revitalize once upon a time. You had your own television show. You're a politician. You have all of these great things going on that you've done in the past. And the reason why you were nominated, it really, honestly, it makes me really proud of you, like on a personal level, because you were nominated because you gave up a lot of what you were working on because you identified a need in the way that our veterans were cared for. And you created the first in the country, right?
Yes, yes.
First in the country, veterans only urgent care. So yes. First, to anybody that's watching this that served, I know I speak for Nicole when I say thank you. We get to have the freedoms we have because of you. And then I want to flip that script back on you, Nicole, and say thank you for taking care of those that take care of us. And that's why you were nominated. And I happen to have kind of watched this process unfold for you. And you had some challenges putting this thing together.
I had a lot of challenges. It was, and number one, it was financial challenges because I've never put a business together this complex. And it was also, I did not get any loans from the bank. I actually did not qualify for a lot. I was maxed out. Honestly, I was a new homeowner. I was, as you said, I quit my corporate job to do this. So I had to go to a private investor, and I had to learn really quickly, what that investment would look like. Did I want to give away my business, or do I want to keep sole ownership and work a deal out? And so I did that. So I am 100% owner. No one owns the company at all. No one has the rights, and no one owns the company. But the credentialing, I couldn't open my doors. I lost probably 6 months of revenue because of the credentialing process during COVID. I literally signed the lease 2 weeks before the entire city and county was shut down. And I had to keep going, and I kept going. I became the general contractor. I knew nothing about construction like that, not to do a total gut in an entire building.
It's fine.
And so it was, it was a lot. I had a meltdown, and I said, I cannot give up. This is my life. I owe this to those who served, and those who fought for this country. And so I did it. It was a challenge, but I wanted to keep going because I worked at Mercy for 12 years. I worked at the VA for close to 4 years, and the healthcare management is totally different. Totally. And while, yes, the VA workers and the doctors, yes, they do care. I'm not going to say that all of them don't care, but I am going to say that there are more veterans than there are facilities. And the VA system needs a little bit of help. So instead of bashing the VA, I brought something to the table where I hope to open up 5 VA urgent cares. Within 5 years, I hope to open up 35. So as soon as St. Louis gets off the ground, I am running.
Well, so you and I mean, we've known each other for a little while now, maybe almost a couple years. And so, I have the privilege of having had a couple personal conversations with you. So I'm going to say some things that are semi-personal, because this was really important for me, that when you were nominated, that we honored you with this, because, and correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, but you broke a lot of odds. And I think part of this, for me, it's not about, I want to be careful in how I say it. It's not about what you're doing, although it is. Don't discredit that at all. But it's about the fact that you're doing it. And you weren't supposed to be able to do this, right? Like you defied the odds. And, from where you grew up and the challenges, not everybody gets out, and you did. So I think your story, on top of everything from TV personality, politician, like, you might inspire someone else that can go out there and change the world. And that's why it was really important to me when your nomination came through, that like I smiled inside and out like I'm doing now. And so just, if you wouldn't mind, share with our audience, if some little girl is sitting in her home thinking maybe she's not going to get out, and she hears your story and she feels like she can because of you, share your words of advice to her, to little girl you or little boy you, and then all the way up to somebody that might be your age and ready to get started in something. Words of wisdom.
Well, Jim, so I don't know if you know, but I do mentor. I mentor at Sumner High School, and that is it's something that keeps me grounded in who I am, and my belief and how I feel about, helping that little girl or young male that can't get out of the ghetto. And I also give away scholarships, because you never know what these kids are going through. And so for every little girl, actually, I had a young lady that I gave a scholarship to, and this is her 3rd year in college. She's a Sumner graduate. She thought she was going to give up, and she started at St. Louis Community College. And I said, you're not going to give up. You're going to keep going. And now she's transferred over to UMSL. And so for any young girl or young male that feels like, I'm not a part of this world. I know what it feels like, because I was raised in the ghetto, and being raised in the ghetto is there are people that were my peers that they didn't know what their next meal was going to be. They didn't know where their parents were. They didn't have electricity, all these factors, and less known, healthcare, a dentist, that these kids will go to school with a toothache and be expected to perform, and or an empty stomach. So you never know. At 16 years old, I saw my best friend murdered in front of me. A male that I taught to read. My mother and my parents and my family, they were really big on, if we don't have, what we will have is education. You will learn, and you will learn to get along with everyone. And so being bused is good for you, because you're going to adapt to the rest of the world. And my best friend, his mother was a drug addict. And that's something that I stay away from, dear to my heart. And I begged him to walk around the corner with me to the corner store. We became best friends, because when I moved on Terry Street, I would see him going into my trash from my garage. I would dump the dinner trash out and I would see him going into my trash. And I asked him one day, I called him, I said, what are you doing? And he said, I don't have any food. His mother was a drug addict and she was selling their government assistance, their food stamps. So he had 2 siblings, and I told him, when I said, when I get wealthy, I'm gonna be wealthy and I'm going to help you. But I said, I want to help you read. And don't you want to learn how to read? And he attended public school. And he said, I do want to learn how to read. I want to be something. When we were 16, he had dreams of going off to college. And we walked around the corner and gangs was on the rise. I mean, they were really on the rise. And he pushed me back in the store. We were walking out of the corner store. He pushed me back in the store to save my life. And he was murdered. So this has been going on for a while. I'm in my 40s and it's getting worse, across the world in the ghettos. And for any young girl or male who feel like they can't get out of the ghetto, you can. Keep a strong mind. Just because my motto is, don't let your socioeconomic background status define you. You define it. If you have to go to the Goodwill, go get you some clothes for $1 or $2. Your priority should be the way you dress. Your priority should be the way you connect with others. Your priority, and that doesn't mean that you're trying to be something that you're not, because we have this big stigma in communities that if you're Black and you go out and date interracial, or you go out and have other friends that are non-African American, that you're trying to be something else. And that's not true. You have to get out and do what's best for you. And that is the way that you will always succeed in life. Perseverance, determination, and being very well-rounded. Your community brought you into this world, and it helped you and it moved you along. But what will really make you as a young adult is doing something different outside of your socioeconomic norm.
Awesome, Nicole. I didn't know that story, so I'm sure a lot of our audience heard that like I did for the first time, and a flood of emotions hit. So, I feel so sorry for what happened, but I'm so grateful that you were spared, because you're doing amazing things and you're inspiring a lot of people. How would someone find you, a veteran? How would they find your urgent care?
They would find my urgent care at www.vauc.org.
And that's V as in Victor, VAUC.
.org.
Perfect. Nicole,
Yes.
I'm so honored that you're a 2021 change maker for Revitalize, an organization you helped to revitalize itself.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you this. So
fire away.
This is for any young person that wants to get into IT. I just officially created my own electronic health record with artificial intelligence added. It will show the signs of PTSD, anxiety, and depression amongst veterans when they walk through the door. That is something that the center is big on. We just got awarded by COI Magazine Applications. With our collaboration is with Patrick Hogan of Cellbridge Science. Please look the article up, and this is phenomenal. So when a veteran comes in, they will be checked in under my electronic health record, VAUC's health record.
That's perfect. And let's get that article tagged in the comments so people can see that. Nicole,
I will send you the link, and please do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Congratulations again on being recognized as a change maker. I've known it for many years. We just didn't have the platform to share it. So it's an honor to consider you my friend, and an even bigger honor to have you as a change maker. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, bye. Larry Cohn, we're going to send it back up to you to keep Changemakers21 rolling.
All right, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing that intimate and personal story. and just how you didn't let that defeat you, and you've been inspired by your past. And I really admire you. Also, just want to share something. I mean, you're doing so many great things in the community, but one of the things that touched me that you didn't have a chance to touch on here was how you've gone back to Cherry Street and with the help of others have helped renovate and build some better homes there in the community. So thank you for being part of the Changemakers21. And again, I hope, I mean, the reason that Jim and I decided to host this was, again, to inspire people from wherever they are in life, no matter where they are, no matter what their past was, no matter where they are currently, no matter if they have $1 in their pocket or $100,000 in their bank account, that you can make a difference, that you can start in your block, you can start across the street, you can start with your heart, you can start with your spirit and your mind, and that together we do make a difference. As I've shared throughout tonight, the mission of Revitalize is to create communities in unity, and it's with teamwork that we can all create a better community. Jim, what do you want to add?
You know, for me, it was really a life-changing experience to host this event, not just what we saw tonight, but what we will see over the course of the next few days and in the weeks to come. So I just want to congratulate every single person that was nominated, selected as a change maker. We've got 11 more change makers that we're going to highlight tomorrow night, and I'm actually posting them right now. We'll get that tagged so that you can see them. But we all have the ability to do something within our capacity. And the challenge that I take away from Changemakers21 is take action. Because we have the capacity. Let's do something together. Let's inspire the world together. Larry, tomorrow night, let's go through what we have lined up, but let's also talk about what we have in store for the change makers. And we're not going to release all of the details yet, but I will tell you that tomorrow night, I'm really honored to welcome a mutual friend of ours to the Changemaker family as a congratulations on this inaugural class, Miss Kim Melia. So Larry, you've known Kim for about 10 years or so, right?
I have, yes. Very inspirational speaker, entrepreneur, again, someone who came from humble, beginnings and background, and she has created an orphanage in Central America and just has done, just incredible work. You'll want to hear her story and her passion and how she's helping these kids in Central America.
Yeah, it's really a great story. She's an amazing person, and she's going to be featured tomorrow night along with several other people. So we've got Denny Foster, who's going to be on there, and Denny was really instrumental during the pandemic, making sure that people had the things that they needed as far as food and general necessities, which again, a lot of us during that time, we took that for granted. Mm-hmm. So tell us about Stephen West. You know Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen Ruler West from St. Louis. I mean, just someone he is part of the Black Wall Street Challenge. And again, just creating and inspiring people to be the best that they can and to take ownership of where they are and to support a community that needs support and to, again, make St. Louis better.
Yeah, and we've got more people from St. Louis, but before we get to them, we've got a gentleman that walked away from the pinnacle of a huge career. He's led major, organizations, Fortune 500 companies, and he walked away to make a difference and be able to give back. His story was he shouldn't be the exception as a Black man in America that he got out of the ghetto. He shouldn't be that exception. Much like Nicole said, boy, I'm seeing a theme here of people that just do amazing things. But Mr. James Rousseau is going to join us. For those of you that don't know his story, you will absolutely love it. And then we've got Art Hill, who's going to be with us. And Art is a retired high school and college football coach that did some really incredible things with the kids, was actively involved with spreading the Fellowship of Christian Athletes here in the St. Louis area, and some other amazing things that we're going to be able to share with you on tomorrow night's interview. And then we've got BJ Murphy, who was the youngest mayor ever in the history of the United States for a particular size city. I don't know what that size was, but he has put together the Feel Good news channel, basically, where he's sharing the stories, much like Revitalize and Jim and Larry are here tonight. And then we've got Carol C.C. Miller. Who is Carol Miller, Larry?
Yeah, Carol Miller was a lady that was instrumental in my life when I was in a really down period. She has a organization, a nonprofit up in Chicago called Positive Focus, and Carol just really spreads positive thought, positive thinking, and inspiration. And she's developed just a huge network. And I met her about maybe 10 years ago, and I was going through some tough times, and through Positive Focus, I was really helped. So I'm very happy to welcome Carol tomorrow night.
Yeah, we've also got Lena Chapman. Lena Chapman was just a bubbly person that we had the chance to talk to. She's doing some incredible things and really active in her community. I can't wait to share her story with you. Also, Preston Martin. We have a lot of people.
Is Preston the sips in the morning?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to his story and just, I mean, great. Again, someone who just had an inspiration and a passion to help people, and he created this online community where men can come and talk freely, and you'll definitely want to hear his story. Again, this is all about just how you can create change from really just your heart. None of this was big pocket expenses. These are just people with a passion and a vision who want to make the community better. So I really enjoyed his story.
Yeah, and then a couple of our friends that we've known again for about 10 years, but we've known a lot of these people for a long time. But Kevin and Julie Moeller created the American Autism Center when they recognized the need for advanced care in rural areas, and built the largest autism center in Alabama, and really helping kids that were told there were no other options to find the options that they deserve. And they've been doing this for 6 years, haven't turned a profit yet, but continue to work towards the goal of making it accessible for children with autism to have what they need. Now they begin to expand that into other areas. And it's just, these are all going to be great stories. So Larry.
Is that the lineup?
That's the lineup.
Okay,
That's
you had the list, so I didn't have that advantage. But I just want to say to all the change makers and that have come tonight and tomorrow, we have more things in store. And again, I encourage, if you're inspired, to make a donation to revitalize in honor of these change makers. Jim and I are coming out of pocket $5,000 to match any of these donations to help these individuals continue their cause and continue their mission. So thank you for watching tonight. I hope you'll tune in tomorrow. And if you liked what you saw tonight, please do share.
Yeah, and the website, just so you know, to make a donation is a revitalizedworld.org/changemakers. And you will find these amazing individuals, all 33 of the initial change makers that we will feature these next 3 days, including today, will be on there. And then stay tuned, because tomorrow night we're going to share the details of how the Changemaker series will continue for the remainder of 2021. So I'm going to wrap us up. Larry, thank you so much for allowing me to co-host this event with you, for all you did to help put it together. And we're going to see you guys tomorrow night on Changemakers21, night 2, Wednesday, July 28th. Thanks for watching.